Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And holy smoly, we have got a lot of stuff to talk about today as NASCAR released their 2021 Cup Series schedule. Along with IndyCar, they released their 2021 schedule as well. Lots of other news and notes, including Chad Knaus stepping down from his role atop the crew chief box for William Byron for the foreseeable future. He's leaving the crew chief position. So then we'll also have our Talladega fantasy preview for the NASCAR Cup Series.
A lot on this one.
So it's a long one. Strap in. It's going to be a fun one, though. Lots to discuss. So first off, Kyle, how are you doing today after a crazy couple of days of news?
Oh my gosh, I'm relieved because we finally have some semblance of what's going to go on in 2021, and I'm super, super excited about things. We've heard the rumors for what it seems like years now about everything looking towards 2021 when NASCAR can finally make changes. And oh boy, have they made changes for the better and for the worse. We'll talk about it all. And to top it all off as well, we've got some IndyCar news. You've got even some Formula One potential rookies for next year making debuts. And of course, Talladega fantasy preview. And I'm excited for that one as well. So a lot to get to in this one. Jam-packed episode as per usual on these Thursday episodes.
Of course, and we're probably expecting some breaking news while this is all happening too.
We've got
right?
like a streak of like 4 straight or something like that, so there's going to be at least one.
I got to have something from Bob Proctor's Adam Stern or one of the bunch.
I got all the notifications on.
We'll be sure to bring you anything that happens in the show if that does occur. But we'll start off today with the Chad Knaus news. Before we get into the schedule breakdown, that'll be the longest part of our show today. So we'll start off with some of the minor news. Obviously, this is a big one, though. Chad Knaus, a 7-time Cup Series champion with Jimmy Johnson, and obviously has moved over to crew chief William Byron the past 2 seasons, and he's going to be stepping down from that role at the end of this season and moving to the VP of competition at Hendrick Motorsports to stay at home, spend some more time with the family. He's got 2 young kids, and that's kind of been similar to Cole Pearn a little bit here, I feel like, to last season, where it was just too much being on the road and everything, and I'm sure this pandemic had something to do with that as well in terms of the how everything is broke down in that regard. But Chad Knaus, obviously someone that we've all grown up watching and watching his masterful job atop of the pit box with engineering and getting the cars as fast as they have. And Jimmy Johnson's 7 championships would probably not be the way that they are without the help of Chad Knaus. So big news here, Kyle, as Chad Knaus is done in terms of being one of the best crew chiefs that we've ever seen in NASCAR history.
Yeah, it was a move that maybe we should have expected just coming down the pipe sometime here in the future. But for starters, it's pretty storybook ending, I guess you could say, in the fact that both Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus are going to be going out of the sport, at least in terms of being there week in, week out in the same year, even though they're not on the same team anymore. So kind of cool how that played out there. But for that 24 team, it's great that Knaus was able to get that win this season in that regular season finale at Daytona with William Byron. Just kind of, I'm sure that probably eased his mind about this decision coming up, but it just makes sense for him at this point. Just given everything from not contending for championships at this point to probably being better served to help Hendrick as a whole, rather than just being atop the pit box of that 124 team. And with that, it also opens up a crew chief spot. You look down to the pipeline, and whether that's somebody in Hendrick Motorsports right now or maybe somebody at Junior Motorsports, they've got a really, really good stable of crew chiefs there. You look at Travis Mack and Jason Burdett probably as a couple marquee options to maybe step in and fill that void for the 24. But got a feel for William Byron here a little bit. Another crew chief kind of change going on here, and given his rapid ascent through NASCAR, it seems like he really hasn't had any stability throughout his entire career, whether that's staying in one series for multiple years or having one crew chief for multiple years. So that kind of keeps turning for William Byron here, but hopefully after this, Hendrick Motorsports can get a really solid crew chief in to replace Chad Knaus here. Maybe, again, like I mentioned, from that Junior Motorsports stable, or maybe somebody else from that Hendrick stable, one of the engineers behind the scenes. But obviously unfortunate because we're not going to be able to see Knaus there atop the pit box anymore. End of an era, I guess you could say. But it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out from here and what the performance of the 24 is like going into next season with somebody else different atop that pit box.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to see Byron, in a musical chair since once again. Just can't get any sort of foundation to kind of just feel set in stone for a while here, but I'm sure they'll find a good replacement. No one's going to be a Chad Knaus, but it definitely is going to be a big loss atop of the pit box for Hendrick Motorsports, but he's still going to be involved with the organization. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Hendrick Motorsports obviously in the news as well today, which we'll talk about in a second in other news. But I don't know if there's anything else we really need to say on that. Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus going out at the same time. There's speculation maybe. Let's do a one-off. Go in the championship finale, and Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson go atop, go out on the same team. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Jimmy kind of shut down those rumors. But Hendrick Motorsports, Rick Hendrick, if you could just give that to us as a fan. We desperately need some positive news this season. Obviously, with everything going on, it would be quite the way to keep a storyline going there in the championship race when it's not necessarily all about the championship four, it can be about Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus as an iconic duo. But it seems like that won't happen, but we can always dream and hope. But we'll move on, I think, here, Kyle, to Matt DiBenedetto, someone we talked about earlier this week with in terms of having his contract up in terms of the renewal date at the end of September, the last day of September. And I check in my calendar. It is October 1st, and we have yet to hear.
Which is crazy to begin with. It's October now, and we have yet to hear if Matt DiBenedetto is going to be back at Wood Brothers or not. And I'm going to assume that no news is bad news for Matt DiBenedetto now, as it seems like he will not be returning to Wood Brothers based off of the speculation and the insiders in terms of their sources. And it leaves the door wide open for Austin Cindric in the Xfinity Series, who's had an incredible campaign this season, to move up and take that spot. Obviously, his father involved in the Penske organization in a very large capacity. So you kind of think that kind of makes sense. But we texted about this a little bit when, it seemed like DiBenedetto is on his way out. There's not too many places for him to go for next season now, with the season kind of dwindling down here. More and more speculation on who's going to which ride is starting to come into place, and it's later for Matt DiBenedetto, kind of like a Daniel Suarez, not as much as last season with Daniel Suarez, where he was left out to dry on the final weekend, but we're getting down to it. So if Matt DiBenedetto is out at Wood Brothers, this is a terrible loss for him after it seemed like he had just found his footing in a top organization. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get the announcement right on the deadline day or hear anything from anybody at this point. Just because when the decision is made, there's still a lot of due process to go through in making the announcement, whether he isn't returning or he is returning. And what I'll say is even today, after the decision has been made, because the deadline was seemingly midnight or yesterday or sometime previous to now, essentially. Even people like Bob Pockrass have said that from reliable sources in Penske that they know things. They've got conflicting reports of, yeah, he's probably out to, yeah, he's probably returning. And this is very much a case of Penske maybe wanting their guy in Austin Cindric to get that bump up, especially with how the 2021 schedule is looking and his prowess on road courses versus Wood Brothers, who would probably prefer to keep Matt DiBenedetto for next season at the very least, maybe even longer term, and are maybe hoping that they can retain DiBenedetto for next year. Maybe something happens with Keselowski there, and then Cindric just immediately steps into Penske, and DiBenedetto and Wood Brothers can keep the relationship going forwards, and they don't have to miss out on that. Maybe have to have another couple stopgap drivers, as what they've kind of had these past few seasons. So I'm fascinated to see what this decision is. I still don't have a very good read on it, even though kind of recently the no news is probably bad news stuff and everything with that. I just don't know what's going to happen here, because it's been clear that Wood Brothers loves this guy. They love having him in the car. They really like him, but then the Penske factor. So I'm fascinated to see how this one plays out. I'm still holding out hope for DiBenedetto, especially given the rest of the silly season market and how Basically, all the good rides are filled up except for maybe the Hendrick car there. But even then, at this point, it kind of seems like that Hendrick car is already filled. So if that is the case and DiBenedetto's option was declined, that's bad news for him. And it's Penske maybe doing him a little bit dirty there, waiting to the last possible moment to give him that notification. Because if he knows that he's not being retained, let's say 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, he can go out and say, I'm a free agent to your Chip Ganassi Racings or any other competitive team that was looking for somebody. So I hope that given that they've waited this long, he returns, but it seems every single day it gets less and less likely, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest here. Penske needs to add a fourth car to their stable so that we don't have this top problem, okay?
That as well.
All of the top organizations have 4 cars. Stewart-Haas, Hendrick, Joe Gibbs. Penske is in that foursome there. Those are the top 4 teams in the sport. You have to have a fourth car. It just makes the most sense. And you love Matt DiBenedetto. You don't want to lose him. You love Austin Cindric. You don't want to lose him. So put in the money. Put in a fourth car. It would make the competition even more competitive. And I mean, it just doesn't make sense from my standpoint why Penske's buying another series and a track when he could just put in a fourth vehicle here to add to the competition.
I mean, if you're going to do it for Sam Hornish Jr., I feel like you could do it for Austin Cindric.
Or Matt DiBenedetto, either or. Like, I think Matt DiBenedetto fits the mold of Wood Brothers more so than Penske. And
yeah, if Penske's opening up a fourth car, I think they just put Cindric right in it. They wouldn't worry about this, like, 1 or 2 year thing at Wood Brothers and then bring him over. If you're opening up a fourth car, it would probably be the president's son going directly into that car. So I wish that would happen. It's just not a reality right now. And because of that, it's a big decision coming up because the trickle-down effect is where does DiBenedetto go from there? Does he pull the maybe switcheroo and just take Cindric's ride in the Xfinity Series, go out, perform very, very well in the Xfinity Series, you would think, go out, run for a championship, try and prove his worth in top-level equipment, and then maybe try and find another place in the Cup Series in a year's time when the market is probably a lot more stable than it is right now. I don't know what the situation would be there if he doesn't get the ride, but the deadline passing and no news is, as you said, probably bad news at this point. And I feel like we'll probably know relatively soon. I can't imagine we'll get to maybe race day and we still won't know because DiBenedetto would just probably be asked, and I don't know what's expected of him in that situation if he has signed or if he hasn't signed to answer those questions because we know clearly that the deadline's passed. So it's just probably the next silly season domino to fall at this point.
Yeah, just makes sense. I mean, it's unfortunate for DiBenedetto if he gets kicked out. He's done nothing really to deserve that this season. Makes the playoff. Doesn't get the win, obviously, but still makes the playoffs nonetheless. And, you know, little teetered down the stretch. Obviously, the first round didn't go his way in terms of the tracks. But this past weekend, a second place at Las Vegas, I think that would have done well for his case. 2 second-place finishes at Las Vegas this season. So I think he needs a break. I would love to see him just have some stability, kind of similar to William Byron, right? I would like just so he doesn't have to worry about looking for a new job every season. It feels like he bet on himself to the 95, got that break. Paul Menard wanted him at the Wood Brothers, and then he gets that job with them this season, and then to get kicked out by someone who's, you know, I can argue either or if he's deserving or not in terms of Cindric. Definitely there's a lot of power in terms of his father within the organization and the Penske stable there. But we'll definitely keep you updated if there's any Matt DiBenedetto news from this past weekend. We'll talk about that on Monday if anything happens, or even during the show today. Who knows? We might find out. But we'll continue to move on here, Kyle, as Hendrick and ECR have announced that they will be working together after this season to create a common Chevy engine. Both engine shops will remain open, but the R&D and the Chevy engine will be one with ECR and Hendrick Motorsports, something that it seems weird that it hasn't happened already, but at the same time, it's big news as most Toyota has the TRD engine that's universal, and you've got the Ford engine from Ford Performance that is universal for all 4 teams as well. So now it seems like I guess, would it get trickled down to other teams then I'm guessing as well? Because, you know, JTG has the Hendrick Alliance as well. So it would make sense if there's one universal engine for the Chevy teams from now on. But big news there, Kyle. Hendrick and ECR forming an alliance. You always hear about the ECR power for many years there in like the COT era, beginning of this decade. And then Hendrick kind of has their own engine supplier. But this is big news in terms of joining forces with ECR and Hendrick.
Yeah, I think it's almost understated how big this really is right now because, as you mentioned there, the other two manufacturers both have universal engines. Of course, Toyota mainly has the one team, so you would expect that to be universal, but Ford has universal there, so it's huge that Chevrolet's two big teams are going to be working together. Just more manpower, more brain power essentially behind those engines, which is going to be huge for both Hendrick and for RCR, and basically the trickle-down effect probably impacting JTG as well and any other Chevrolet team. So very excited by this, and hopefully this means that it'll be mutually beneficial for all the Chevrolet teams there. Maybe Hendrick gets a bit of a boost, and RCR, who had a major step up this year, is likely continuing that trajectory upward. So it's very exciting from that perspective as well. Chip Ganassi Racing, of course, Chevrolet team, probably impacted by this as well. And when you're talking about teammates, you usually talk about individual teams, but when you're talking about engines and stuff, your teammates are also your fellow manufacturer teams. And it's kind of fitting that it's this weekend when we talk about manufacturers the most at a super speedway, but it's very exciting to see that these two teams will be working together on the engine front, which will hopefully see a boost in performance for next year and maybe add some more top 5, top 10 speed for these teams.
Yeah, and maybe that R&D time that they spent in the wind tunnel and stuff like that for Hendrick Motorsports proved that they need that little bit of help with ECR, and that's the department they're lacking in with the engine. But ECR power was very prevalent throughout, like I said earlier, the middle to early 2000s kind of thing. They were exceptional at their engines. And Hendrick, it's always been really good up there as well. So I can't imagine what the force behind those two working together could really create here. It's going to be pretty incredible to see if it goes in a positive direction for next season, or if it goes, kind of maintains their trajectory right now. But it's an exciting news nonetheless. Obviously, with this weekend news, it's kind of getting overlooked. But in a normal week where it's not a schedule release, like as the one we just we're going to talk about in a minute, this will be pretty major news in the week here, Kyle.
Yeah, I feel like if we're 3-4 weeks into the schedule next year and we're seeing some big performance out of, say, RCR or even Hendrick more than we expect, or maybe even somebody else like Chip Ganassi Racing, or a surprising top 10 run for like a JTG team, I think we'll be looking back at this announcement a little bit more and be like, hey, maybe we should have paid more attention to this, because this has got pretty big potential here. I mean, like, this has got big potential, and obviously there's a lot overshadowing it this week, as you mentioned there, and probably rightfully so. But I am very, very interested to see how this plays out over the course of next year, and probably more impactful and more likely when we get to that next-gen car in 2022.
Yeah, it's very interesting timing as well with that extra year here with this current gen car and then going to the next gen. But I'm going to be really keeping my eye on, obviously Chevrolet switched their body this season. They're going to go to a new engine as well. So Chevy's really kind of on the late end here with this current car. They're making improvements or uptick in performance. So it's interesting to see how their performance will be, because, Hendrick hasn't had the dominant force that they have been as in previous years with the Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson era. They're a little bit off from that for sure, but we'll see if this is the step in the right direction that organization needs. And with Richard Childress Racing trying to come back to the forefront of the pack as well, like the Kevin Harvick days and Jeff Burton and whatnot there. But we'll see in 2021 how that all turns out. But we'll continue on with the news here, Kyle, with stuff that just broke right before the show, as many things often do. Kaz Grala will replace Natalie Decker at Talladega for this upcoming weekend for Nice Motorsports in the Truck Series. Decker obviously missed last weekend with Vegas for an unknown medical reason. Our thoughts and prayers are with her during this time. Hope that she has a speedy recovery, whatever she's dealing with. And she's not been medically cleared, obviously, as a result to not race this weekend at Talladega. So Kaz Grala gets another interim role here this weekend, replaced Austin Dillon at the road course at Daytona earlier this season for his positive COVID-19 test. test. So he's kind of like that replacement driver. Reminds me of Regan Smith a little bit this season in terms of that. But Kaz Grala getting another shot here in semi-decent equipment. Obviously at Talladega at a super speedway, anybody can win. So we're interested to see how Kaz Grala performs this weekend, Kyle.
Yeah, and Grala is doing what he needs to do this year, essentially. He doesn't have a full-time ride. And he hasn't really had a full-time ride in a couple of years. So he's kind of taking his opportunities when they come, and whether that's in the 21 part-time in the Xfinity Series with RCR, being the replacement driver there for Austin Dillon at the Daytona Road Course when his name was called there, or now stepping down to Nice Motorsports in the Truck Series. He's just basically stepping in the seat whenever he can, and that's exactly what he needs to do this year. And his name's been floated around a little bit in silly season discussions. I'm interested to see where he lands, because it seems like he's going to be landing a full-time gig for next year at some likely so in the Cup Series or the Xfinity Series. So excited to see what happens there. But this is a guy who's a legit talent. We saw him in his first ever Cup Series start at a road course, go out and finish top 10 in very, very impressive fashion. 7th place finish at the Daytona Road Course. And in the RCR 21, he's looked impressive as well. Finished 4th at Road America there. I'm excited to see what he can do here. Of course, that one win in the Camping World Truck Series at the time.
And it will be again.
And will be again. But won that Daytona race to start the year back in 2017. That's where his one win in the Truck Series came from. So who knows what can happen. Obviously, as you mentioned there, it's Nice Motorsports this year, so maybe a step down there, but it's the great equalizer, as everybody says, in the drafting and super speedway. So very interested to see what Grala can do this time out at Talladega.
Yeah, going to be ones to watch for sure. Hopefully the broadcast notes him out once in a while. It'd be a good thing to see there. We'll move on here from the NASCAR side of things into IndyCar quickly. St. Petersburg, the season finale in just a couple of weeks' time, really, for IndyCar. Their season ends much earlier than the NASCAR Cup Series in Formula One this season, who goes in December. But IndyCar is going to be having 20,000 fans at St. Petersburg for their season finale. In Florida, obviously, anything can happen in Florida in terms of having fan capacity right now. Obviously, the Tampa Bay Lightning just won the Stanley Cup for hockey this past weekend. This past couple of days, I guess. And they had a championship parade there, which was kind of crazy to see the mass gatherings there. But they're going to have 20,000 fans for the IndyCar finale. Obviously, fans at a track is great to see. But in these times right now, I think it would have been better to be safe rather than sorry. But if it's Florida, it is what it is down there. There's not much else to really say about it without being too mean about to Florida. But they do make some questionable decisions in terms of these mass gatherings lately. So at least fans are going to be for the season finale for IndyCar, Kyle.
Yeah, the thing is like I'm all for the limited capacity if it's enforced, but the problem that we've really seen with motorsports and trying to do the limited capacity stuff is, sure, for the 95% of the race where the race is actually going on, everybody stays fairly spread apart in the stands because it's just such a massive just building, essentially, that you can have 20,000 fans in an arena that seats 100,000 and be as spaced out as like 5,000 in a regular hockey arena that we kind of imagine when we hear 20,000. That's max capacity at like the Air Canada Centre. Well, when it's like a Bristol Motor Speedway, for example, and it's all spread out, it works. Where it doesn't work is when people don't really pay attention anymore, and it's the end of the race and everybody flocks to the fence, and all of a sudden those 20,000 people that were all nice and spread out are suddenly all together in very, very close capacity. So I'm all for it. It works when it's actually enforced and people actually go by the guidelines and everything. But given everything we've seen from Florida recently and basically all the stupidity that we've seen, my hopes are not all that high. It is St. Petersburg, so it is a or street course, excuse me. So it's all spread out. It's all good like that. 20,000 is a pretty big number, though. So I'm a little bit concerned. Hopefully there's no bad news that comes out of it, but we'll see how it's enforced, see how it looks on TV. But to this point, I've been pretty disappointed in the limited capacity stuff and what we've seen from fans in that. And hopefully it's not another case at St. Pete, but my expectations are not all that high either.
Yeah, same. This is going to be interesting to see how the camera shows it and the broadcast shows it in terms of how they're spread out and stuff. Obviously, over a street course, you can kind of imagine they'll be a little bit more spread out, but at the same time, there's not as many seating opportunities, so they're going to be a little bit more compact at the same time. So, yeah, I don't know. At least IndyCar doesn't have to worry about that after St. Petersburg and have to worry about fans for the rest of the year after that. But they'll conclude the season with fans nonetheless for IndyCar. We'll move on to the SRX Racing Series. Another edition has been named today.
Yeah.
A big one. Someone that is, prevalent amongst kind of the current generation, I guess you could say, but in his son with Chase Elliott. It's Bill Elliott making his appearance in the SRX Racing Series, returning to racing. And this is a huge addition to this series. Someone that is obviously made famous the number 9 car before Chase Elliott kind of took it over, and it's going to be interesting to see how he performs in this series, but it's going to be exciting to see Bill Elliott back on the track. Maybe Chase goes and watches his dad, and then we see some throwback pictures or something like that. But Bill Elliott will be part of the series for 2021, Kyle.
Yeah, well, we know that they're planning to do midweek races, so who knows? Maybe we could get Chase and Bill in a race together. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit wishful thinking there.
Chase will be the crew chief.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's awesome to see. And the whole thing with the SRX series is to get some of those big names from the past. And you really can't get a bigger name than Bill Elliott from that era right now. Countless of fan choice awards from him over his career, was basically the precursor to Dale Earnhardt Jr. in that regard, just taking the award every single year. So maybe if we can get Dale Jr. in there as well, we can see who would actually win the fan contest if they go head to head.
That'd be fun to see, hey?
That would be kind of fun to see, but it's awesome to see him in that series, and that lineup of drivers just gets better and better by the week.
Yeah, I can't wait to see.
I'm very excited for it.
Unfolds. Definitely much watch TV next season.
Oh yeah,
for sure. The summer months are just going to get even more ramped up with the schedule that they released, and that during the midweek we're not going to have any time to breathe again next summer. But I'm going to be excited to see Bill Elliott on the track once again next season. We'll move on here to FanVision, something that is at the track for the fan experience. It's meant to enhance the experiences. Something that I've used personally at the track. It's like basically a little monitor. You get to watch kind of onboard cameras and some stuff like that at the track and listen to radio scanners and stuff. And they are unfortunately closing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. They've gone bankrupt essentially, something that's really unfortunate for the fans. And obviously they've got the other scanner, RNX, I think Electronics is what it's called. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on that. RCA Electronics, something like that. That is also similar, kind of like their rival. I remember Sprint and FanVision were kind of like together when Sprint was the sponsor for NASCAR for the Cup Series. But an unfortunate loss here for the fan experience. Obviously, they haven't had to worry about that too much this season, but that has led to having the loss in sales and business. But unfortunate for the fan experience, Kyle, as it's just another nice element to a race weekend that the fans get to enjoy, that they're going to unfortunately lose from the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's not something that I've ever had the privilege to use yet, but obviously it's disappointing anytime you see any kind of tool essentially that helps the fan experience at the racetrack go by the wayside because of something completely out of their control.
Yeah, there's not too much to really discuss on that. It's just unfortunate to hear that something that is, so ingrained in terms of the race weekend culture. You go into the racetrack, you go and that's basically the first thing you get. It's right at the entrance. You got your choice between your FanVision or the other company. I'm blanking on what the name is. I know it's red, the colors, but you get to choose your thing. You go into the track for practice kind of thing, which we'll talk about what's happening with practice in a bit. And then you just listen to the scanner, listen on what the drivers have to say on the radio. So unfortunate for FanVision there. But we'll move on to Formula One here, Kyle, and the last bit of news for the day before we get into the schedule breakdowns. As for this upcoming race, I guess I could say, for the Nürburgring, for the German Grand Prix. I'm going to call it the German Grand Prix. It's not whatever they want to call it. It's the German Grand Prix.
No, it's German.
It's the German GP. Obviously, Michael Schumacher's been in the news a little bit in terms of Lewis Hamilton looking to tie his record. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for Lewis this past weekend at the Russian GP, but his son in Mick Schumacher will be driving for Alfa Romeo in FP1. When I first read the news, I thought he had gotten the ride at Alfa Romeo for next season, which is not entirely impossible to guess that could happen. It could happen for next season, but I missed the P in FP1 in the news release, so I saw F1. But he will be driving for Alfa Romeo this next race in FP1 for free practice. And then Callum Illot, another F2 driver, will make his F1 practice debut for Haas in FP1 as well at the Nürburgring. And then Robert Shwartman is going to make his debut in Formula One for practice in FP1 for either Haas or Alfa Romeo. It's still undetermined on which team he will be for the season finale in Abu Dhabi. But three young names in the sport, three prospects for the Ferrari Junior Academy that have rose through the ranks exponentially over this past season, especially with Mick Schumacher being the championship favorite there right now. And what a story it would be if Mick Schumacher, as in F1, another Schumacher, to take over his father's legacy in a way and come into F1 for 2021, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for this. Not this upcoming weekend, but next, I believe it is.
Yeah, it's next.
Both Schumacher and Illot getting in Formula One free practice in the same session for two different teams, mind you, but comparable in terms of performance is going to be very interesting, given that they're 1 and 2 in the F2 championship right now, and obviously later in the season, Robert Shwartman as well, who started the season very, very hot and has kind of trailed off a little bit, falling behind his two Ferrari Academy teammates there in Schumacher and Illot. But the entire top 5 there in F2 was so talented. We're probably looking at 3 different drivers in that top 5 making the jump to Formula One for next year, potentially. Schumacher and Illot feel pretty safe about them making the jump up with the two Ferrari affiliated teams there in Alfa Romeo, who literally have a Ferrari junior seat in the team, and then Haas, who of course are a Ferrari engine, and we'll see what happens with their driver lineup there. But I feel like we might see them opt to go with a younger Ferrari junior in one of those 2 seats. And outside of that as well, Yuki Tsunoda potentially for Red Bull and their driver academy there, potentially to AlphaTauri. So some very, very intriguing talent down there in F2. And it's always exciting to see a couple different names in free practice. I believe earlier this year, we already saw Jack Aitken get a free practice for Williams this season. So it's going to be very interesting to see how both Schumacher and Illot do, and how their times in free practice both compared to each other, and also to the teammates running there in that session as well, which will probably impact or potentially impact the future of their driving careers for next year as well. And whether they're able to make the jump to Formula One obviously depends who wins the championship, because they literally cannot return to F2 if that's the case. But F2 has been so great this year, arguably the most talented crop of drivers that they've ever had at the same time in that level. And always good to see them get the opportunity to hop in an F1 car during the season and take practice in one of those free practice sessions. Excuse me.
It's interesting timing for a track that nobody has gone to for the current F1 drivers on the grid, that they're bringing in some rookies to also take their spot, and valuable practice time maybe this weekend, or not this weekend, but the next race weekend. And obviously Schumacher making his F1
that's
debut.
Cool. I feel like that's
Germany.
Intentional.
That has to be intentional. Like, it's a great story nonetheless. I'm going to be watching FP1. I'll tape it. I won't be getting up that early, but I'll tape it, and I'll be definitely watching Schumacher as he drives around in a semi-red and white Ferrari-powered car. So it's going to be fun to watch. I hope Illot doesn't get overshadowed that weekend. I hope it's not just the Schumacher show. Obviously, it is for specific reasons that should be the case, but I hope Callum Illot gets the deserving praise that he has done this season in F2, and hopefully puts in a good showing in FP1 to show that he is deserving of a Formula One seat for next season in either Alfa Romeo or Haas. So it makes sense on where each driver is kind of going into this weekend in terms of for next season. It makes sense in terms of openings, it seems, but we'll make sure to give you any updates if we find out where these three Ferrari junior drivers are going to be ending up in 2021. Also, to finish off the news and notes section here, Kyle, 14 years ago today, Michael Schumacher won his final F1 race in 2006. Obviously, it's just a Schumacher storm right now, it feels like, in terms of news. It's been obviously great to kind of reminisce about Schumacher's time. Obviously, I didn't get to watch too much of him as a fan, which is unfortunate. But the people who did, I'm sure it's special to see that his son is doing so well and has kind of lived up to the expectations that is expected of him. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that last name for obvious reasons. But Schumacher, nonetheless, 14 years ago, can't believe it's been 14 years ago. He raced for an extra 5 seasons after that, but Schumacher, 14 years ago since his final F1 victory.
Yeah, it's always cool to reminisce on stuff like that, and it's kind of funny that we get that little note there coming up to not this weekend again, but in a couple weekends' time now, where Lewis Hamilton once again has the opportunity in Germany, of all places, to go out and tie his record for most career wins in Formula One. So kind of cool how all of this is kind of blending together to create kind of the perfect storm for Hamilton to do it. It's not going to be the situation where he can break the record like we maybe expected potentially going into the Nürburgring, but still being able to match it is just as impressive as well. So kind of cool, the storm of Schumacher news and everything in the headlines right now, all capped off with Mick getting to participate in free practice as well. So quite the storm of Schumacher news recently.
Yeah, I hope Hamilton gets it done in Germany. Like, I just would be disappointed if that doesn't happen, if he doesn't even tie it. So I hope that happens in Germany, and it would be quite the race to watch for the first time F1 going back to the Nürburgring since, I think it's 2013, I believe. Is that correct? I think that's what I've read.
Something like that.
It's been quite a while since they've been there, but I think with that, do you have it pulled up? Do you
looking for it right here?
We'll stall here. Fill the time. So how's it going today? Pretty good. I think it's 2013.
Probably.
I'd hate to be wrong on that.
I think that's right. Let's see. Hockenheim, yeah, it would rotate.
We've got it. Come on.
In 2014, the new owners of the Nürburgring were unable to secure a deal. I just want to see like a list. Just give me like a list.
Come on.
Don't worry, I'll be cutting all this out anyways. What the hell? Why can't I? Last race. Yeah, it was 2013, so you're right.
Yeah.
Not too sure. Who won that race?
I'm going to go with, let me guess. Vettel.
Sebastian Vettel did win that race. How about this for a podium, though, at the last Nürburgring Formula One
Maldonado,
race?
was he on there?
Number 2, racing for Lotus Renault, Kimi Räikkönen. And number 3, racing for Lotus Renault, Romain Grosjean.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
Maybe we look at Räikkönen and Grosjean on the podium. Can you imagine if that's the podium this time around? Oh, man.
For some reason, I doubt it. I also doubt Valtteri Bottas finishing 16th. But, hey, who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? It's the Nürburgring. It's historic for its chaos. So, yeah, that's like kind of all the news and notes, I guess, Kyle.
Yeah, I don't know, before the big hitters at the very least.
This is the breakdown. This is something that we've kind of anticipated here for the last couple of weeks. Little bits of news on who's going to make the calendar have rumored out there, and they've kind of broke before the actual schedule was released. It was kind of weird how they actually did it on Wednesday. It was
weird.
But
I wasn't a big fan of it.
No, we all knew the schedule before NASCAR officially released it. But I think we kind of get into it here, Kyle. We'll start off with we'll go week by week here, and we'll stop at the changes kind of thing for what the 2021 Cup Series schedule looks like. So it's going to start off on February 9th with the clash on the Daytona road course this time around. Obviously, we knew that for quite some time. It feels like we've known that since 2017, but
it really does feel like that. But
that's going to start off the season on the Tuesday, and then we've got the Thursday, the duels at Daytona, and then the big Daytona 500, obviously, on Sunday, February 14th, something that we've known for a while there as well. But the second race of the season is switching up once again as Homestead Miami Speedway. They're going to stay down in Florida like we talked about earlier this week. They're going to be there on February 21st. Then on February 28th, they're going to go to the West Coast Swing, starting out at Auto Club, which could be maybe for the last time, potentially with the current 2-mile layout. Obviously, that's going to it's heartbreaking a little bit still talking about it, but it's Auto Club nonetheless. Then they go to Las Vegas as the middle portion of the West Coast Swing, and then rounded it off is Phoenix on March 14th. Then they go to Atlanta for their first race, yes, their first race of the season for the Cup Series on March 21st. And then we go to the first big change of the 2021 schedule, something that we talked about last week on this show. It's Bristol on dirt. I've definitely got my opinions on it, but I think we can kind of go back and forth here, Kyle, on our thoughts on the first big change to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, and that's one of the best, if not the best, racetracks on the NASCAR calendar, getting switched up and going on dirt for next season.
Yeah, just before that, of course, the Daytona road course is one that we've known for a while. I'm still a bit hesitant as to that for the clash, but I do like it that it's on a Tuesday, a bit of an awkward time there at night, so I'm excited for that at the very least, but I'm still hesitant on that. And I do like Homestead being the second race of the year, moving up 1 month essentially to the date almost, moving from March 22nd originally from this season to February 21st for next season. So I like that move, staying in Florida there and then getting into that maybe a slight West Coast swing. But Bristol on dirt is the first big change that we didn't previously know to this week. And when we heard the rumors, I figured this would be something like maybe like 2-3 years down the road that might pop up again. I was not expecting for March 28th, 2021. This is a decision. I don't really like it. And by that, I mean, I don't like it at all, really. Bristol is, as we've said time and time again, one of our top 2, top 3 favorite tracks. It consistently gives you the best racing in NASCAR, and whether that's a long green flag race or cautions aplenty like we saw this year in the 2 different versions that we got, essentially, it's always amazing racing. And I don't really get why we need to screw with it and put dirt down in what's going to be a lackluster product to try and do something. I understand it. The only perspective that I understand this from is trying to regain that fan interest in the area, because the attendance for that spring race has not been very good these past few years. I get it from that perspective. But completely replacing it for a dirt track, I don't understand this at all. The stock cars are not going to be good on the dirt. It's going to be a sloppy mess. If you're doing a dirt race, you should be going to an actual dirt track, not trying to make one out of Bristol. And on top of it all, like, it's just why? Just why?
Okay.
And jumping into it right away with a points paying race, not experimenting first with an exhibition or anything. I don't get this move. I'm optimistic that it surprises us and we see a good race, but dirt racing is supposed to be those extremely light, high horsepower sprint cars and late models and everything, and it's awesome there. It's not great when it's the truck series. It's been decent at Eldora with the truck series. It's been fun. It's been different, but it's not usually a great racing product. It's usually sloppy. It's usually messy, and we usually get it's just not all that great. It's cool as a one-off, don't get me wrong, but it's not all that great. And I'm sure I just expect it to be worse at Bristol and in the Cup Series. I just don't like this move whatsoever, and I know you share much of the same sentiment.
All right, time for another installment of Wacker Rants. Holy smokes, this is terrible. I am not a fan of this whatsoever. This is getting a failing grade right out of the gate. I am not. I could totally be wrong. It could be the race of the year. It could be the race the best race I've ever watched. But this is not what I want. You have not tested the stock cars on this whatsoever that we know of, that you haven't even gone and put dirt on tried the cup cars on a dirt track, let alone at Bristol. I know there's video footage rolling around of sprint cars rolling around there in the early 2000s. That was when Bristol was, before it got resurfaced into higher banking than what lower banking than what it is now. And they're much more faster. This is 550 horsepower cars that are 3,000 pounds going in dirt. It's just not going to work. It's just going to be the why Bristol. I can understand the appeal of doing it, but at the same time, the spring race has lost attendance because of the weather. That's what the problem is that it's always rainy in that March to April range in Bristol. I experienced it firsthand. I went to a race and it got rained out to the night. I got a Bristol night race out of it to the spring race, which was awesome, but that's why fans don't go, is because of the rain. And obviously in the summer months, it's basically guaranteed to happen when the race is slated to happen. When the race gets pushed over to a Monday, fans lose attendance and they lose interest. Bristol dirt is just, I don't think it's going to work. If it's raining a day before or something, it's going to turn into mud. It's going to I don't know how they have a plan for that. I feel like it's kind of a rash decision. Fox Sports is meant to be like kind of the pusher towards this as well, which thumbs down, Fox. That's not the way to go. Bristol is meant to be your moneymaker in terms of getting attendance in the first place. Maybe the appeal of having dirt on it, but this is the best stock car drivers in the world. They're not dirt racers. Some of them have obviously experimented with dirt here and there. You think of the likes of Chase Briscoe, obviously Kyle Larson, who's expected to maybe return to the Cup Series next season. There's got to be something that, Christopher Bell. You've got all these guys that run the Chili Bowl and stuff like that in the off season and are really good on dirt. They are probably like loving this, but I think for the majority of the Cup Series guys, this is not what they want. This is not what they signed up for in terms of racing. This is the fact that they've taken away the All-Star race from Bristol this past season as well, and moving it to Texas for 2021, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. But then they're losing a regular Bristol race on top of that. Like, we're only getting one Bristol race on the concrete banks. That's ridiculous. It's the best short track. It's the best track on the NASCAR calendar, and we're losing a date because Fox Sports wants to experiment with dirt. I hope this is a one-off. I hope it honestly does fail so that they realize that this is a mistake, because Bristol as it is should not be touched. The way it is, it's perfect for me. I think it's the greatest racing in the world when it's done properly, and this is not going to be done properly, I don't think. I think they've just I don't even think that the people who own the track are even excited about it as well. I think this is just kind of like a scheduling ploy to change things up, and sometimes too much changes too much. And I think they've kind of overdone it here with we're not even adding any short tracks to the calendar on top of it, and we're losing something that is so desperately beloved amongst the NASCAR fan base in terms of Bristol being done right on the high banks. And this is frustrating, man. I don't know what else to say. I think that this is a mistake, but I'd love any final thoughts, or like not any final thoughts. We can go back and forth here for a bit, but any other thoughts here on the Bristol dirt race?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said there. And it's interesting that you mentioned the short tracks essentially losing a date. Everything's been made about Auto Club becoming a short track in a couple of years now. And everyone going, oh my goodness, they're listening to the more short tracks and everything. Well, for 2021, we're actually getting less, because I'm not counting this dirt race as a short track race, because it's not.
Not at all. Not at all.
So we're essentially getting 3 short track races plus 2 Richmond, which is it's a short track, but it's not the same short track. So
it sucks. It sucks.
We're going from 6 short tracks to 5. So we're getting less short tracks, which is something that we've asked for. Granted, they gave us the road courses that we asked for, and I'm glad for that, but I just don't get why it needs to be both at Bristol, a points-paying race, part of the regular season. The way to do this would have gone to a proper dirt track, whether that's Eldora, Knoxville, something that has appropriate seating. So you're probably looking at one of those two, and running it as an exhibition, doing like a midweek, late night kind of thing, and running it for fun, testing it out. If it works, then maybe you could look at doing it like you do with Eldora in the Truck Series and running it for points sometime in the future. But going into it blind with these heavy stock cars, which don't have the horsepower necessary to really make it all that interesting, I just think it's going to be sloppy. It's not going to be entertaining because it's going to be stop-start. You're not going to get these long runs because I'd probably say 40% of the drivers don't have experience on dirt, or at least enough experience to make it worthwhile. And it's just, this is supposed to be the pinnacle of stock car racing, right? Not the pinnacle of dirt racing, which is why it should be an exhibition, not a points paying race. If you want to watch the pinnacle of dirt racing, you go out and watch the World of Outlaws. There's a reason why it's so awesome. Another factor is the weight difference in the cars. You look at the stock cars and they're more than twice as heavy as the sprint cars, which are awesome, and they have less horsepower. The sprint cars are higher horsepower, lighter weight, which is why it's so entertaining. The stock cars are going to be slow on it. It's not going to be that great. I have very low expectations but the main thing is that for Fox, people are going to tune in to see what it is. And I think that's why Fox wanted it. They knew that before Next Gen steps in, they can at least maybe get a big jump in viewership. Maybe Bristol gets a bump in attendance there just to see what the hell stock cars and NASCAR on dirt's going to look like. But I don't see this being successful. I don't see it as something that they should be doing going forwards. And I just think it's a recipe for disaster and something that's going to get hyped up by kind of the marketing and media cycle. And I think it's going to let a lot of people down. If you were going to do something like this, you need to do it properly. And this is not the way to do it.
I don't know why they have not practiced this at all. Like, they haven't done any sort of test. It'd be different if there was some sort of like a proceedings to lead up to this, like have a proper test where some cup guys go out and just practice just a cup car on dirt, essentially. Not even at Bristol, it doesn't have to be. As long as it's on dirt with a cup car, you'll get a sense of how it could perform. And this past spring Bristol race was arguably one of the best spring Bristol races of all time.
Literally ranked first in Jeff Gluck's fan poll of the past 4 years, or four and a half years.
And that's fall and spring races combined. That's Bristol across the board.
Not just Bristol, the highest ranked total. Yeah. It's the highest rated. Did you enjoy this race or not? Or was it a good race?
Yes or no?
It's the highest percentage yes of any single race that has happened over the past 4.5 years, which is saying a lot. And we're getting rid of that race date. So
yeah,
it's an unfortunate way to start things off because I really like all the changes that they've made. I just really, really don't like this one. I'm not going to give it the failing grade that you are just because I appreciate NASCAR trying things. I just don't like the way that they've gone about this one. I don't think it works. I think it's probably just going to be a one-year gimmicky kind of thing to boost TV ratings for a year, boost attendance for a year, and then when we get to Next Gen Car, we get maybe an exhibition race on dirt or something like that, but I don't see Bristol Dirt working long term. So for me,
I would feel differently if it was an all-star race. Like, that would make sense.
That's what it should be. Like,
right?
Or as an exhibition race where you have the Cup Series paint schemes on sprint cars and you go out and do something like that. Like, bring back like the Prelude to the Dream thing. Like, there's so many different options, and I just feel like this is probably the worst of them. It's going to be cool to watch the first time, but I feel like the cool factor is going to wear off in about 3.5 minutes when we have 2 cautions and don't get a clean lap in until 20 minutes into the broadcast. So I'll give it a straight D grade just because I appreciate what NASCAR is trying to do here. I just don't think this is the correct way to do it. So I'm keeping my mind open. I'm hopeful, but it's still getting a D.
Yeah, I'm giving it an F. I'm not getting swayed on that. You're
You're the strict teacher that likes to fail students.
I'm playing bad cop today, but yeah, we'll talk about the Bristol race a little bit later on in terms of some other news around.
What I will say is that of all the changes that they've made, of all the significant ones, that is by far the worst, and all of the rest of them at least have multiple different areas where you can look at it and either understand it or go, this is going to be good. So
yeah,
the Bristol dirt thing is way on its own. Everything else I'm very, very excited for.
Interesting. Okay. We have a little bit of differing thoughts on that one, but
let's continue
talk about that. Yeah, let's keep going. The next race after that, it's going to be a weekend break there after the Bristol Dirt, which we'll probably all need by that time after that race. But we'll go to Martinsville after that for it seems like a Saturday night race. So they'll keep the Bristol, the Martinsville night race in the spring there. Then we go to another short track after that in Richmond the following week, but that's going to be on a Sunday. Seems like they'll go back to a day race for that one for the spring. Then we go to Talladega. Good 3 stint there, I guess you could say. Richmond's kind of been a little lackluster, but Martinsville, Richmond, and Talladega to really come back from that 1 week break is really nice. And April 25th there for Talladega. Then we go to Kansas on May 2nd. May 9th, the first Darlington race of the season. That's another change here we could talk about here, Kyle.
Yes.
Darlington getting a second race date, something that hasn't happened for quite some time. Ever since they've introduced the throwback weekend, they've had only one race date. I'm trying to think back to, I guess 2014 was the last time they had 2 race dates, I believe. I don't think they had 2 in 2015. I think 2014 they had a spring race and then the fall race, I think, right?
Something like that. 2013 or 2014, one of those two.
I think it was 2014 because I think Harvick won that race in 2014. But nonetheless, Darlington gets a second race date. I'm kind of skeptical a little bit. I'm not skeptical because I know the product that Darlington produces, but I think one thing for me that makes the throwback weekend so special at Darlington is that it's the only race at Darlington for the season. And I really appreciate that aspect of it with Darlington. Obviously, they've gone there 3 times this season due to COVID-19 and all the comeback race there with the doubleheader there. But I don't know. I feel like there was maybe some other tracks you maybe could have given a date to there instead of adding a second Darlington race. Darlington's definitely one of my favorite tracks, don't get me wrong, but I love the uniqueness of how special that throwback weekend is on Labor Day. And I think this kind of deters deters that for me, for myself, kind of downgrades the significance of that, the specialness of that weekend. So what are your thoughts here on Darlington getting a second race date?
Well, for starters, I was surprised. We hadn't really heard any rumors about it. And I guess when you look at the season and the fact that we've raced there 3 times, maybe you could have looked forwards and gone maybe that they had a second date there. But this is one that I wasn't expecting on Mother's Day weekend as well. So an interesting choice there. Yeah. I like it because Darlington's so unique, as you mentioned there, and it just produces pretty solid racing. And it's also going to be 750 horsepower next season, which is another key aspect to it there. So I like that, the lower downforce package there. So I like that. It's kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but my only gripe is that the only new oval that we're getting is Nashville Super Speedway. I would have preferred that we see in that spot, in that spring spot, because I really, really like Darlington as the playoff opener. I would have preferred to see that be Gateway. Chicago is losing that date there with Chicagoland, obviously. Losing that out for Nashville, essentially, swapping in that race date there. But Gateway is opposite end of Illinois. It's basically on the edge there with Missouri. That's why it's called Gateway. But it just from watching races there, from doing the iRacing there, it's basically a flat version of Darlington. You have to shift or you can shift going into turns 1 and 2, which is something that you don't see at ovals like ever. It's just a very unique track. It's kind of in that Darlington mold where turns 1 and 2 are very tight, and then turns 3 and 4 are much more open. It's just something that I was really hoping to see on the schedule, and I'm disappointed that we don't get to see it But the big gripe for me is that we only have one new oval, and that's the bread and butter of NASCAR is the ovals. So I was disappointed in that regard. But all of that being said, if you're going to add second dates for tracks on the NASCAR calendar that only have one in a normal year, you can probably do a hell of a lot worse than Darlington. Like Darlington with 750 horsepower, low downforce is going to be really exciting. I really like that combination. Just look at the Xfinity race, the Xfinity races this year, the crazy finish with Chase Briscoe and Kyle Busch earlier this year, and then much more recently Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin there. Those were awesome finishes. You don't expect that every single time, but with that low downforce 750 horsepower, it's a lot more likely that you're going to get those kind of really, really fun, right on the edge of things runs at Darlington. So I do like it from that perspective. So overall, I give this one, I'll go a B-, just because I really like the move to add a second Darlington date. But at the end of the day, I like keeping the schedule as diverse as possible. And I don't like the fact that the only oval that we're adding is at Nashville Superspeedway. I really, really was hoping that we see Gateway this year. We don't see it this year, so I was disappointed in that regard. So I'll give it a B-, even though the move in a vacuum, I'd probably give a B+. Just the fact that we're not getting another oval other than Nashville bumps it down just a little bit for me.
Okay, I also have the same grade as a B-.
Nice.
I think it makes sense. Obviously, Darlington is a proven product. We know how well it can produce racing, and with the 750 horsepower package, it's going to produce even better racing, I'd imagine, with the tire fall off and slipping and sliding a little bit more.
100%.
So a little bit more passing opportunities, I imagine, as well, which will increase the fan experience and how much we love the track. So yeah, B- makes sense for me. I think it's just more for myself. It's the throwback weekend on how special that is, how much I appreciate that, and on its own kind of thing. And I like Darlington having that single race, especially when it is on the calendar. But they're basically reverting back to when Darlington kind of was when it had 2 races of the season around that similar time period as well. So if it's going to happen to a Mother's Day weekend as well, it's a great track to have that with the history behind that. It's always great to see the mothers at the track.
It's
hopefully we get to see that for next season.
Track as well. So
yeah, it makes sense in that regard. I'm not going to slate the decision too much, but at the same time, I think there was a little bit more options there to put someone new or some track new instead of adding another.
It's very much a decent decision. You don't hate it, but you don't love it either, which is why these B- grades I think are pretty fair.
Yeah. We'll move on here, Kyle, I think to the next weekend. Dover, after Darlington, getting their only race date of the season, something that we've known for a long time as Nashville Superspeedway, is taking over one of their race dates. We'll talk about them in a minute. And then we'll move on to another weekend right after that. It's the first road course of the season in COTA, the Circuit of the Americas, something that we talked about previously on the show a couple of weeks ago, that COTA was going to get this date after Texas loses a race date, and obviously both of them being in the state of Texas. They've kind of swapped in terms of points-paying races. Texas gets the All-Star race as a result of losing that points-paying race, and COTA gets the road course date. So obviously a big move here, Kyle. NASCAR has kind of listened to us here in terms of asking for more road courses on the calendar. They've definitely done that for 2021, but I'm excited to see how COTA does for next season. It's definitely one of the best road courses in the United States in terms of its facilities and the track itself, the layout. I think it's going to produce a great product. Tony Stewart's tested on it a little bit there in a stock car, said it would provide great racing, and I believe Tony Stewart when he says something. He definitely speaks his mind in terms of his opinion, whether it's positive or negative, and I trust him when it's positive. So this is a big move here for NASCAR to go to COTA. We've talked about this a little bit already at length, but what are your thoughts here on COTA getting this race date on May 23rd?
The big thing for me is the date there, because we knew previously, obviously the report came out a couple weeks ago and we talked about it a decent amount when it came out there that Circuit of the Americas would be on the Cup schedule. But it's the fact that it's taking over the May 2-4 weekend race that usually goes to the Coke 600. That's pretty huge. As long as I can remember, I don't know if it's always been the case, but as long as I can remember, on my birthday weekend, I had the joy of getting to stay up late on the Sunday night and watching the Coke 600. and now it's the Circuit of the Americas. So NASCAR is banking big based off the scheduling that with the long weekend, they're going to get big fan attendance, big viewership for a marquee event at Circuit of the Americas, which is, by all reports, one of, if not the best racetrack facility in the United States right now. It's definitely one of, if not the newest big circuit. And it's just very, very exciting. When a racetrack is good enough for Formula One, NASCAR should probably race on it as well, if it's in the United States, essentially. And, well, I believe that for Canada as well, but that's a whole nother thing. That's my long-term campaigning for Montreal back on the calendar, but that's probably going to be a long-term play. But no, I love this move. I'm very excited for it. Surprised a bit about that date there. I was not expecting it to be the May 2-4 weekend and bumping the Coke 600 to the last weekend of May there. But all being told, super excited for this race. I feel like that turn one is going to be mayhem. To be determined how good the racing is going to be just because, and what the layout is going to be, just because it is a long road course, so people will likely get strung out. But a lot of high speed, also a lot of very, very slow, tight corners. So interesting in that regard. I'm excited to see how it plays out. Overall, I'm going to give this one an A-. I really, really like this move. They're banking big time with this weekend and going on May 2-4 weekend. I'm super, super excited for this. It's something that I wasn't expecting on the calendar as of like 2.5 weeks ago. Super pumped for this one, and it's the first road course of the season. So I'm going to go with a big score on this one.
I'm going to go with an A. I'm going to up you on this one.
Okay.
Not going to go with an A+, but I'll go with an A on this one because I love that they're taking a race date away from Texas. I think that's a big appeal for myself. Texas has just produced lackluster products, right? So I think taking away 1.5 miles in that regard and adding probably one of the best road courses in the United States is a huge plus for me. And I love the track itself. It reminds me of a lot of Watkins Glen. We kind of discussed that when there was rumors circulating around that in terms of the similarities with the S's and the long sweeping corners. It'll be interesting to see if they use the long version of the track or the shorter version of it. I imagine they'd use the shorter version so that they keep it a little bit more compact.
You say the shorter version, but then they also added Road America, which is super, super long. So maybe they're open to the longer road course. I don't know.
That'd be crazy if they add both 2 long road courses like that. Like, they're exponentially long in terms of length. They definitely get spread out. Maybe that's something that we have to
2-minute plus lap times, 100%.
Yeah. So I would like to see them probably use the shorter course because they get at least the S's there. The kind of the back part of the track is not the greatest. I'd imagine there's obviously that one passing opportunity before they get to the long straight. But at the same time, cars going down on a long straight in terms of stock cars, when the slipstream is not as powerful as Formula One, it can produce when this straight is going to end. But if they keep it kind of compact, I think a lot of braking opportunities, lots of different passing maneuvers there for the drivers to take advantage of. So I'm hoping for the shorter version, but if they end up using the long version of the track, it's not the worst thing. But I definitely have my preference in terms of that. But big addition there to the Cup Series calendar. I think that's probably like my biggest thumbs up in terms of what they've added, really. I think that's a great move, by the NASCAR execs there to make that decision. But the one thing that would kind of decrease that in terms of not giving me an A+ for it is that it's taking that Coke 600 date away for Memorial Day weekend there. I think that race around it just fits that weekend. It's NASCAR's longest race, usually fits with Monaco, and then you've got the Indy 500, and then you've got the Coke 600. It's just a great day of racing. I hadn't
even thought of that.
Right, so it's such a great way to end the racing day, to go to a road course, which is going to be during the day, so that's going to be interesting to see how the scheduling works with the Indy 500, because that's usually during the day, and the Coke 600 at night. So it's a very interesting scheduling maneuver. When is the Indy 500? Did they release the date there?
Yes, they did. The Indy 500 is May 30th. So
they did move it back. So it is on the Charlotte day. Okay, all right.
Wow, that's okay then. That's something that I completely missed in that regard, because I was about to say that there's no more potential for the double, and I guess there still is. It's just a weekend later. So
I wonder if Formula One will do the Monaco GP then on the May 30th weekend. Then it would make sense, right?
But who knows? All I know is that was a little bit surprising there. But maybe I'm a little harsh there with the A-. Maybe we swapped roles there. But I'm super excited for this one.
Yeah.
I think it's just because we haven't seen stock cars on the track. So we don't really know what the racing is going to be like versus something like Road America or Nashville Super Speedway where we have kind of a sample to pull from. We don't have a sample to pull from
That's true.
Coda. So just maybe reserving my expectations a little bit and so that I'm not underwhelmed if it's a very, very decent race and not this kind of insane maybe kind of similar what we were thinking with the Daytona Road Course where we had these lofty expectations and it was still a good race, but they didn't meet these lofty expectations. So we came away disappointed from a good race. So I think maybe a little bit of that is playing in here. So I'm keeping things in check, but an A- is nothing to scoff at.
No, it's definitely a great grade to give Coda. As you can probably guess, Charlotte is the next weekend after Coda for the Coke 600, NASCAR's longest race, something that I really love to watch every season. Whether it's not the most entertaining race, it's still a spectacle nonetheless. It's definitely part of the crown jewels, which we'll talk about in a minute as well in terms of what's happening with that crown jewel. But after that, they go out to the West Coast again to Sonoma Raceway, another road course, something that was off the calendar this season due to COVID restrictions and traveling.
Courses in 3 weeks there.
Yeah, 2 road courses in 3 weeks. And then that leads into the All-Star race the next weekend, which is going to be on a Sunday night instead of a Saturday night, which it usually is during the year. So a Sunday night race there for the All-Star. I'm surprised by that decision. Saturday night races for the All-Star race usually make a bit more sense, but Sunday nonetheless at Texas Motor Speedway. So this is another change there. Bristol was obviously the host of the All-Star race this past season. Didn't produce the greatest race for sure, but definitely had potential. Bristol being the greatest racetrack amongst the active NASCAR calendar. The fact that they're taking a date away from the concrete in terms of putting it on dirt, and then they're taking away the All-Star race on top of that, I think that's a double whammy to Bristol. I think that's disrespectful to something that garners in so much attention for NASCAR. So Texas, I don't know how long this will necessarily stay as the All-Star race, so it's going to be an interesting decision there, but they have definitely have the opportunity to experiment here a little bit in terms of the packages they want to use or what kind of format and stuff, because Texas is getting their first race date of the season on June the 13th. Something that we have not seen for a long, long time, that they're getting their first race that late into the season. But what are your thoughts here, Kyle, on the All-Star race moving to Texas Motor Speedway?
Yeah, well, it's not just the fact that it's moving to Texas. It's also a month later than it usually would have been. The original schedule for this year, the Charlotte All-Star race, which is what it was supposed to be, was going to take place on Saturday, May 16th. In 2021, it's taking place on a Sunday night and on June 13th, which means that it's a whole 4 races later in the year than what it's previously been, which is a pretty substantial move there. I kind of like that move. I'm not going to lie. It also opens up more opportunity for any of those young drivers to maybe get out and go and win a race potentially and lock their way into the All-Star race. And maybe that's a factor in it as well. But I do really, really like that placement on the schedule. And in terms of moving the All-Star race to Texas, I got to say I love this move because you're taking away that 3.5-hour snooze fest of a regular season race. You're shortening it way down, I would assume, in terms of race length, almost certainly. And you can experiment the hell out of things with different packages, different gimmicks, different whatever. It makes what's previously a date that was one that you look at on the schedule and you go, damn it, I'm not looking forward to this one, essentially. And you're turning it into something that turns that date into a road course date at Circuit of the Americas, which is something that I'm very excited for, and also turns and also fulfills your obligation by going to Texas twice, going to the All-Star race, and you can just try stuff there. So at the end of the day, I really like this move just because of those two factors there, removing the points-paying race, making it something way, way more attractive. And you can just try things at the Texas All-Star race, and it's not going to be the same snooze fest that it is in the 3.5-hour length that it is in a regular season race. So goes hand in hand with the Circuit of the Americas getting that date and replacing it on the regular season schedule. I'm going to give this move an A. I really, really like this just because you're taking away that snooze fest race. So I'm a big fan of this. I will say that's me expecting them to have it fairly short and have pretty gimmicky in terms of just trying stuff. If you're not trying stuff and it's still pretty long, it's going to be the same kind of snooze fest, just instead of 3.5 hours, maybe like 2.5. So that would lower the grade, but I'm banking on them trying stuff in that All-Star race, which they've shown that they've done over these past few years. So for me, I'm going to give it a surprisingly high grade of an A.
All right. I'm going to give it a B. I'm not as big a fan of it as you. I think just because of how much potential there was at Bristol, like I just can't get over the fact that Bristol was an opportunity there this season and they took it, and then they're kind of just going away from it that quickly. But I understand why they are able to do it. I'll accept taking COTA for losing a Texas point race, essentially is what it is. I'd rather have COTA on the calendar than having 2 Texas point races, and then Bristol's the All-Star race, I'd probably say. I think I like that combo of having another road course, especially the Circuit of the Americas. I can live with a 1.5 mile All-Star races, which is what we've been familiar with for how many years, except for this past year. Texas is not my favorite track by any means in terms of how they've configured it. If it was the old configuration of Texas, heck yeah, I'm all for it. But this is a little bit sketchy in terms of how the product could be. Reminds you a little bit of how an iRacing race went a little bit this past year in terms of how it's kind of gimmicky like that. But yeah, I like how they moved it back a month as well. I think it's in the middle portion of the season. It kind of makes sense there. It's kind of splitting it in half, and it makes sense. It ends Fox's broadcast schedule as well. That's the final broadcast race that they're going to have on the 2021 schedule. NBC takes over a little bit earlier next season, going into the next race, which we'll talk about in a second. But I'll give it a B. I just think I need to see the All-Star race in its entirety before I make my final decision on how well it's going to perform. Hopefully a shorter race at Texas will provide better racing. I hope they have qualifying there for the sprint down pit road where they go 130 and then they go on the pit stop and then they get the crew members to do the 4-tire pit stop. But because that's always a great spectacle at the All-Star race. It just provides that extra bit of element there. But any final thoughts here, Kyle, on the All-Star race?
Yeah, so just quickly, it's almost exactly halfway through the season. 17 races before it, and then 21 race weekends after it because, of course, you have the Pocono doubleheader still. Right. So technically 22 races afterwards, but 21 race weekends. So I do like that move because previously, thinking about it retrospectively, the All-Star race was pretty early in the season. You're talking about
I've always
13 races before that. It's never something that I've really thought about because if you look at other sports, their All-Star events take place 3/4 of the way through the season. In football's case, it takes place the week before the championship game. So in that regard, it was very early in the year, so I do like that move to bump it back a little bit. And
it makes sense though because of when the Coke 600 was. They did the back-to-back weekends at Charlotte.
Exactly.
That's the only rationale really I could see behind it. But
yeah, that's
not
exactly
having to do that anymore.
Been. Yeah,
that's why.
For me, just finally on this, ideally we would have had 2 regular concrete Bristol races, and then the dirt race would have been the All-Star race or exhibition, something like that. That would have been the A+ move. It just wasn't in the cards because of the contracts that they had with Texas and trying to take a points-paying race away and give it to Circuit of the Americas. So they had to try and figure out something creative, and they did so with making it the All-Star race. So given the circumstances, I really, really like that move. Obviously, I'm higher on it than you are, and I completely understand it because Bristol as an All-Star race has so much potential, and it's unfortunate we only got to see it for the 1 year. Hopefully we get to see it at some point in the future again. But to this point of the schedule, I would probably say 1 dud, 2 very intriguing extra race dates in the regular season, and whatever the hell the All-Star race is going to be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited, though, for those 2 things, the COTA and the Texas swap. I think that's a great move by NASCAR. It makes sense from a logistical standpoint in terms of upholding their contracts and stuff. If that wasn't an issue, I'm sure they would have loved to have had a second Bristol date on concrete, but with the way things go, It is what it is. So we'll move on to the next weekend after the All-Star race opening NBC slate for broadcast. It starts at Nashville Superspeedway, the replacement for one Dover race. Obviously, they've already have had their Cup Series date at this point in time in the 2021 schedule. But Nashville making its appearance on the Cup Series schedule for the first time ever. It's a huge opportunity there for Nashville. Obviously, you want to go to Nashville Fairgrounds. That's something that we've heard for the last couple of seasons and going back to that historic place. But we're going to a concrete mile and a third, I think it is.
Mile and a third, yeah.
Right. So interesting decision there. Watching the Xfinity Series races there and seeing some clips from there. Obviously, the famous invocation in terms of dear Lord, we thank you for my smoking hot wife. That was a great.
That was a good impersonation.
Thank you very much. I could have done it a little bit better there, but I think obviously that's the thing that I remember about Nashville Superspeedway the most. But I'm interested to see how it does with the Cup Series. They've obviously, over the past week or so, we've seen some pictures come out from their social media in terms of revamping the track and getting it prepped and ready to go for next season. It's an interesting place in terms of how much capacity they have. It's an interesting grandstand. It's very tall and very not wide. It doesn't have much width to it. It's just right there on the front stretch. There's no back stretch or any corner seating capacity there in terms of attendance. But I'm interested to see how it goes, though, Kyle. I think this is a nice move. I'd rather have Nashville Superspeedway, I think, than another Dover race. I think that's what it comes down to myself. I love to hear your thoughts on Nashville adding to the calendar in a market that has kind of been untapped for a while.
Yeah, I completely agree with that last statement there. I'd much prefer, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I want the schedule to be diverse. Basically, I want to limit as many double dates as we can. Obviously, there's some exceptions to those. You look at super speedways, you look at some of the short tracks, stuff like that. For certain, you keep double dates. But when you're talking about mile and a halves or something like Dover, which is a mile, but it's much more like a mile and a half in terms of the entertainment value than it is closer to the short track. So in terms of diversifying the schedule from that perspective, I love the move to drop a Dover date and add Nashville Superspeedway because it's owned by the same people. So they're still getting the same cash flow, whether it's Nashville and Dover to Nashville. It doesn't matter to them. They're still getting two dates. So I love that move. I'm interested to see how this one goes. I really, really like the move in terms of getting that Nashville, Tennessee market there. That's something that, as you mentioned, there has been untapped for a long time. It makes sense to go there, see what the appetite is for NASCAR, and maybe see if you can get some investment into the fairgrounds and maybe end up adding that back to the schedule. That's obviously the long-term goal. But for now, it's going to have to be the Super Speedway, which is shorter than mile and a half. So I don't know who the hell came up with that name, but it's a mile and a third, which is a key factor here because for next season, anything smaller than a mile and a half is going to have that low downforce 750 horsepower package, which means this track at Nashville is going to have that low downforce package. So that's a big plus for me. Huge. That adds to it here. Replacing the Dover date, I really like. But at the end of the day, it is still kind of that D-shaped cookie cutter kind of style. We haven't seen any like the current cars on there for a long, long time here, so we don't really know what.
Not even this generation of car.
Not this generation at all. So we don't really know what to expect yet. But overall, given all of those factors there, going to an untapped market, a big market in Nashville, replacing a Dover date, just diversifying the schedule. It's the only new oval. I'm going to give this one a B.
All right, I'll give it a B+. I'm going to be a little bit optimistic on this one. I think it makes sense. Dover has obviously had quite the undertaking in terms of what it's gone from to what it is now, having that playoff date, the Monster Mile, chaotic, what it was built to be for much of the mid and early 2000s and even the beginning of this decade here. But it's definitely teeter off the last, I'd say, 5-6 years. It's definitely gone down in terms of entertainment value. And I think NASCAR has recognized that with taking away a playoff date the last couple of seasons from Dover, and then now taking an entire race date away from it itself. So it makes sense, and they're adding it to the same people who get the same cash revenue and get the cash flow that they would get from a Dover race anyway. So it makes sense from that standpoint. Hopefully this is not the only racetrack in the future that hosts a NASCAR Cup Series race in Nashville. The fairgrounds is something that we obviously would all love to see back on the calendar.
Circuit?
Anything. We did not get that street circuit that we were kind of maybe possibly looking at.
They did say that these aren't the final changes and that they're looking at more for 2022 and beyond as well.
Yeah.
So
this is kind of like the beginning process
Montreal
of what is meant to be.
Circuit, those are the two I'm still waiting for.
Yeah, obviously Montreal is something that we've been begging for a long time.
Good. It would be so
I know.
Good.
Untapped market, man. I'll sell all I'll buy all the tickets. I don't care.
You'll sell them all. Okay.
I'll buy them and sell them all. I'll make a lot of profit. But yeah, I think that's a pretty cool addition there with Nashville Super Speedway. So
yeah,
a B from Kyle, a B+ from myself. We'll move on here to the Pocono doubleheader the next weekend after that. Something that they tried this season. I think it was successful in terms of getting rid of both Pocono dates in the same weekend. I can't stand that track whatsoever. So to get them over with in one weekend makes sense. Try it again with hopefully some fans in the stand.
That's exactly
and that's
it.
the big reason why they're going back to this.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're trying it again. Likely when you can have at the very least more fans there in June 2021. Hopefully we're in a much better situation where you can be looking at much more fans being in attendance there. And you didn't really get to test out how that would go. So run it back, get the Pocono dates over within a weekend. I'm glad they're not overdoing the doubleheader thing or anything like that. It's just Pocono. That's true. So I'm glad it's in that regard. And yeah, if there was any double date that you have to do because of the contracts and get it over with in a weekend, sign me up for Pocono.
It makes... You know, I just realized this now looking at it. There's no midweek races next season.
No midweek races.
And I just realized that now, and something that they've really tried to push hard for, like we heard last season to try, and then obviously this year presented it.
This year.
And the ratings were just not there for the Wednesday races. So I'm kind of happy to see that we'll get a little bit of break in the midweek races for next season and hopefully for the foreseeable future, to be honest. I think it just makes sense to have NASCAR on the weekends. So I like the Pocono doubleheader. It's not really a grade we can really give on this one. It's something that we tried this season. I think it was okay.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. So ending the month of June there for the NASCAR Cup Series is the Pocono doubleheader. But we move into another new addition to the Cup Series calendar the next weekend on the July 4th weekend. Obviously a big celebration there for America's holiday. It's Road America. Fitting that it's America in the name of the track, that it's on America's weekend. And I'm going to let you go first on this one, Kyle, because I have my opinions on this one. It's probably a bit different than your take, but Road America nonetheless adding to the calendar another road course. The second, I guess, new addition to the calendar for next season before the third one, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
In road courses.
In road courses, yes. Road America adds itself to the calendar after being on the Xfinity Series calendar for many, many seasons and providing some pretty decent racing there, having some great finishes there in that last corner, obviously, with some last spins and thrills there. But what are your thoughts here on Road America getting a prime date here on America's weekend in terms of celebrating 4th of July weekend with Road America?
This is another one that surprised me a lot. We kind of expected Road America to be on the schedule in terms of them looking to add a road course. That was the one that probably made the most sense in terms of adding it to the schedule in terms of the ease of it for sure. But how about that for a prime date? July 4th weekend on July 4th? That's a bit surprising. I was not expecting Road America to be out of the schedule and take that Indianapolis date that previous this year was going to be on July was originally scheduled to be on July 5th there that weekend as well. So I really am intrigued as to what kind of made that decision for them. And I feel like it probably leans towards them wanting to go with that IndyCar doubleheader again with Indianapolis. They saw how successful that was. And when IndyCar is going to it twice, but the first time is May 15th, and then the second time is down in August 14th, and you can basically pick between those 2 days to go to it. Given the month of May and everything that it is with IndyCar, you're probably looking at that August date. So I think it makes sense from that regard. I'm just surprised that it's Road America that takes that prime date. Not something I was expecting, but in terms of the track itself, it's very long, and that's kind of the biggest gripe that people have with it if you do, just because you can get very, very strung out, kind of what we were talking about earlier with COTA. If they run that longer layout, you're probably going to see quite a bit of distance between cars potentially. So there is maybe that concern, but that being said, Road America is a very, very strong track for stock cars. We've seen it in the Xfinity Series. We've seen how good the racing can be there, even though it hasn't been a banger every single time. I think that it's a very solid road course, one of the better ones in the United States. I'm not certain about that date there, July 4th. I think that you could probably have something better that weekend, but I really like the addition of Road America, so I'm going to go with another B.
Okay. I'm going to go with a C- on this one.
Ooh, okay.
I'm not the biggest fan of Road America. I think it's a bit overrated. I think I've said this on the show a couple of times where I think it's nice to have the Xfinity Series go to tracks that the Cup Series don't. And I think this is a perfect example of something that the Xfinity Series excels at and the Cup Series may not. I think overall across the schedule, this is kind of my opinion. I think this kind of put it over for me, is that they've overdone it a little bit with the road courses for next season. 6 on the calendar in total is a little bit too much for my liking. I think 5 or 4 is probably like the sweet spot for myself. I would have loved to have seen an additional short track in there or something a little bit newer than Road America, something that the Cup Series hasn't gone to for a while. So I don't know. There's no real reason why I'm giving it such a low grade, like a C-. It's just my personal thoughts. Like, I just don't think it makes sense. But we'll talk about this here. It is taking away a Chicagoland race date here. I think this is the big reasoning, I think, behind myself not liking it, because I love Chicagoland. I know there's no winning the argument of, oh, you guys want less mile and a half, so we'll give you a road course. But I love Chicagoland. I think it's a great track. It's something a little different. The back straight is not straight. It's actually curved a little bit. It provides a unique element in that regard. And it's not adding another Illinois date this time around with Gateway. So I think that's a bit interesting as well, that they're not racing in the state of Illinois for next season. But, yeah, I don't know. I think Road America, I would rather have Chicagoland than Road America there for the July 4th weekend. I don't know. I just think that's all I can really say about it. There's no real rhyme or reason why I think Road America may not be the greatest fit for the Cup Series. It just gets too spread out for my liking amongst the Cup cars, because you definitely see the road course ringers. They're going to be looking at this for next season and be like, holy crap, like I'm in contention for at least 5 to 6 wins now, which is something that they probably couldn't say for the majority of the season. It would provide an opportunity for some guys like Michael McDowell, some of those road course ringers in mid-pack equipment, to get solid points finishes and maybe put themselves in a better position points-wise for the next year's playoffs. But that's talking about an entirely different thing. I don't know. I think Chicago, I love that area. I think it's a great market for NASCAR in that region, in Joliet. But, yeah. What are your thoughts there on Chicagoland losing a date? Because that's kind of like the repercussions of Road America gaining one, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm not huge on Chicagoland losing the date there. I would have liked to see it stay on the schedule. But I also understand why it fell off there in terms of the interest in the area just kind of wasn't there recently, even though the racing there these last couple of years has been really, really solid, especially the finishes. I'm just surprised to see it completely fall off of NASCAR's schedule. The rumors are that it's also not, or I think it is confirmed by the racetrack, that it's also not on either the Xfinity truck or ARCA series schedules, which is very surprising.
Another track,
track that we'll talk about. But I do like Road America. I think I'm a fan of the amount of road courses that there are this year. I really like 6 as a number. I wouldn't go any higher for sure. Maybe 5, but I do like 6 as a number there, especially with the tracks that they're going to. So that's a factor for me as well there. But at the end of the day, I would have, again, this is a point I made earlier, I would have liked to see at least one more new oval, and I'm disappointed we didn't get that. And the fact that we're losing Chicagoland as well is another factor there. But I do like the addition of Road America, even though there are definitely some negatives that go with it. But I do like the addition. Interesting about the date selection there, but I'm intrigued, to say the least.
Okay. We'll move on from Road America, I think. We'll move on to A mile and a half that we've already mentioned in today's show. It's Atlanta getting a second date once again. The wore out old surface NASCAR's, I think it's their oldest surface, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Like I think Auto Club's close to it, but I think Atlanta's like 27 or 28 years on that surface. But
you run a half lap at that track and you need to change tires.
Yeah, anytime there's a caution, you got to get 4 tires. There's no 2 tire strategies that pay off there at Atlanta, but. Getting a second race day, interesting timing, not as late as it was previously when it had 2 dates, usually the late August, but they get a mid-July race here on July 11th. It's going to be 400 miles, they've said already, so it's a bit shorter than the spring race from 500 to 400. And I kind of like this decision. I'm going to be honest. I think it makes sense in terms of what they're doing to the track outside of it, with adding a casino and an amusement park, and that adding an entirely new facility right outside the track is going to gain huge publicity for the race weekend, make tons of money there in Atlanta for the race weekend. So I like it a lot. I think I love Atlanta. I think it provides some great racing with the tire fall off. It'll be interesting to see when they eventually do repave it, if they do keep the 2 race date during the year. They are getting a Kentucky race date as a result of this move, which is interesting to say the least. We'll talk about that in a second. But what are your thoughts on Atlanta getting a second Cup race date, Kyle?
They're mixed. I really understand the move on a business side of things, because giving them that second date really gives them that extra push to go and get all of the basically amusement park area around it. It's really a remarkable plan that they're going for. And if they're able to get that approved and get going on that, that's why that they'll have 2 race dates. So I definitely get it from a business side of things. The racing there is pretty solid as well. You look at the tire wear, it's so huge. I'm concerned about the repave, and if it's a 2-date thing going forwards, you need to nail that repave. You need to nail that repave regardless. But the one gripe that I have with it is it's 2 regular season dates for Atlanta. Like, I don't really get that. When you look at the regular season schedule and the way that it goes out this year, there's 3 tracks that have 2 regular season dates. Daytona, obviously, the season opener, regular season finale, you don't touch that remotely. The other one is Pocono, because you have to go to Pocono twice because of the contract. You can't change that. But Atlanta having 2 regular season dates is just kind of weird for me. I would have much preferred it, and I know that they didn't mess with the playoffs at all, except for switching Texas and Kansas in terms of the order there. But if I'm talking about a perfect world, I would much rather see Atlanta in the playoffs for Texas there, and Texas be a regular season race, and we have 1 regular season Atlanta race and then a postseason Atlanta race. That's just a little OCD maybe thing for me. I'm not huge on them going to the place twice in the regular season there, but if you didn't want to touch the playoffs, fine. I like the move from a business side. Again, losing Kentucky for Atlanta, I'm fine with that. Even though I do like having multiple different tracks on the circuit, Kentucky just wasn't really doing it. The racing there just hasn't been good. We've got lucky with a couple late cautions resulting in some good finishes, but the racing previous to that has largely been a snooze fest. So all of that taken into account, I'm going to give this one, I'll say, this is tough because I want to give it a B, but I'll give it a B- for now, just because if this is a long-term thing, there are some concerns I have with it, but I like it from a business side. I don't hate it from an entertainment side. I prefer to see it in the playoffs versus 2 regular season dates. So all of that taken into account, I'll go B-.
I'll give it a B. I think it just, that B category, you could go B+, B-. B.
I was thinking about B,
it's just entirely B, right? Like it just makes sense. One thing I will say,
I'll bump it up to a B. I'm bumping it up.
All right. Okay. I think one thing is I would switch. It's probably not even possible, but if I could, I would keep it in the regular season 2 Atlanta dates, but I'd switch Michigan with it. I think that would make the most sense with it being
I don't hate that.
With it going to late August, go from that to the regular season finale in Daytona. I think that's a good back-to-back stint there. And I think Michigan in July makes more sense than them being the second to last race of the regular season, which doesn't make sense to me in that regard when Michigan has a July date usual or June race kind of fits around that point in time. So I would say Michigan and Atlanta would switch because then it would go to back where Atlanta was originally when it had 2 race dates. Hopefully the Sunday race at Atlanta is a night race because I love Atlanta at night. I think that's a great part of it. The one thing
that I think that it would be great for Atlanta if it swapped with Michigan, but if you're looking at the schedule and the way that it falls out, then if you're putting Michigan in that Atlanta date, then you're going Texas All-Star race, which is a thing on its own. But after that, you've got Nashville, which is an unproven commodity, Pocono doubleheader, which we know is not great, Road America, which has some potential, but as you mentioned there, is pretty spread out racing for the most part. So might not be super, super entertaining to the casual fan there. And then you'd be going Michigan, New Hampshire, back-to-back weeks off. That's a pretty rough stretch there. So in terms of that, and this is why I'm bumping it up to a B now, looking at it a little bit more, I think Atlanta does add in another race in there that has a higher expectation of entertainment value and in what is probably the weakest or most unproven stretch of the schedule there in that middle pack before that 2-week off break for the Olympics.
Yeah. I think, it just makes sense there. Either or, there's no real big difference. Yeah. It's just whether the string of the races is better than the other. But we'll move on to the next race, New Hampshire, July 18th. No real change there. And then we go on to a 2-week Olympic break for the 2021, I guess it's Summer Olympics.
Yeah. I feel like it's the Summer Olympics if it's taking place in July.
In Tokyo. So NBC, obviously, with the coverage there. So they take the 2-week break there, a nice summer break for the drivers to go and relax and unwind. Their only other break up to that point would be the Bristol Dirt Race to Martinsville weekend. So they've had a long stretch there of consecutive races to get a 2-week break there. I'm sure that will be much beloved by the drivers and their families. So it's a tough stretch there for the guys, and especially going into the summer months, but they get a late July into early August break. So they come back to Watkins Glen. Obviously, they didn't have an appearance on the calendar this past season due to the COVID-19 restrictions.
That date.
August 8th, that's my mom's birthday nice. Well. So, sorry, Mom, I'm going to be watching Watkins Glen on your birthday next year. But, it's a great race date for Watkins Glen. It leads into
great return.
Quite the stretch here before the regular season. 4 races left after the break in the regular season for the NASCAR Cup Series. I really like the Watkins Glen date here. And then we move on, I think, Kyle, unless you have anything on the Watkins Glen. Not really, right?
Not really. I just really like that as a race to return from a 2-week break.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Glen, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's going to be a welcome, nice sight to see them back racing at Watkins Glen in New York.
And how about this? Back-to-back road courses here.
Yeah, they go to the Indianapolis road course. So they are done with the Indianapolis Oval for, it seems, for the foreseeable future for the NASCAR Cup Series. And they're going over to the Indianapolis road course with a little bit of a caveat to it. It is a doubleheader weekend with IndyCar. Obviously, they've experimented with that this season with the Xfinity Series and the IndyCar. Now they're going with the Cup Series. The big boys are going on the same race weekend as IndyCar. It's going to be a scheduling nightmare, I'm sure, for Indianapolis and how well COVID is around the state of Indiana at that point next year. But okay. I'm not going to say what I was going to say there. I almost jumped ahead of myself. I don't know what I was going to say there. But Indianapolis road course, back-to-back road courses here. It's a very interesting tactical move from NASCAR's perspective. Definitely a lot of road courses in a short period of time over those summer months from June to August. At least 4, if I'm reading that correctly. 5? Is that 5 road courses?
It's 5 road courses in the regular season because there's only 1 in the postseason.
Yeah, with it starting at COTA and then going down to Indianapolis. So they've got 5 road courses from May 23rd to August 15th. So lots of road courses there over the summer months for the NASCAR Cup Series. But what are your thoughts on Kyle from Indianapolis going to the road course instead of going on the traditional oval, which is a crown jewel of NASCAR's Cup Series?
I think bittersweet is the best word to describe it, because I know that we're in the minority, but we do like the racing in the Cup Series on the oval there. It's not as bad as people say it was. And the history of just racing on the oval is so huge, and the crown jewel and everything with it. But that being said, the Xfinity Series proved it this year that the road course there is a far more entertaining product than the oval, even though the oval, in our opinion, is still decent. And I would have liked to see the oval stay on the schedule, but I just don't see that going to 2 Indianapolis dates is in the cards at all, given the interest in the area. So going to the road course, I think, is a very strong decision, and I'm super excited for that event. Now, whether it's a crown jewel, that's up for debate still. I personally wouldn't say it's a crown jewel until it proves itself in the future, even though it is still in Indianapolis. I don't think you can go that far. But I really like that move, I'm not going to lie. Back-to-back road courses there of major potential for awesome races in Watkins Glen and Indianapolis road course. I'm going to give this move an A. Even though I really like, even though I enjoy racing on the oval at Indy, the Xfinity Series race there from the beginning to the end was just unbelievable this year. It was one of my favorite races of the year, given the struggles for Hendrick coming back, the crazy finish, 4 or 5 different guys being in contention for the win. If we get 75% of that race in this race up next year, I'm going to be happy with it. And the back-to-back with Watkins Glen, the doubleheader, with IndyCar, all of those factors, I think this is going to be a pretty big event for NASCAR in terms of viewership. I really like this one, so I'm going with the big A.
Okay. I'm going to give it a B-.
Ooh, that's quite the discrepancy.
I don't know. I'm going to say I like the Indianapolis Oval. I don't think people give it enough credit for how good of racing it actually provides. I think ever since the 2008 tire debacle there, where they couldn't go 2 laps with tires without them failing, has really kind of put a skeptic's mind into a lot of people's opinions of the track. I think something that is so great about the NASCAR and IndyCar is that they have that correlation, that they race on the oval together. IndyCar and Indianapolis Motor Speedway go hand in hand, right? It's basically in the name of the series, Indianapolis, right? They have the opportunity to go on the road course and the oval. I think NASCAR's opportunity there to go on the oval is such a privilege. It's such a great thing to see going across the yard of bricks. One of the, some of my greatest calls since I've started watching NASCAR is them coming off the final corner, the chills that Alan Bestwood gives me when I listen to ESPN and hearing them, go silent kind of thing. And you just see the checker flag waving as they go across the yard of bricks. You won't get that feeling anymore as they're going the opposite direction off of the final corner to the yard of bricks with the road course. So I think they shouldn't have done this, in my opinion. I don't think they needed to do this. With going to Road America, bringing COTA in, that's great, okay? You want to get road course on the calendar, sure. But I think there's a limit to that. I'd rather have Road America on the calendar and then keep Indianapolis as an oval than vice versa kind of thing. So I don't know. I think I just like the Indianapolis Oval and what it means to the sport. You just see how many fans were out there this past summer outside the track with what it meant to them in terms of seeing NASCARs on the oval, and even for the Indy 500 obviously as well. But I think this is a little bit of a miss. Obviously the racing could totally sway my opinion on it. If it's a great race, then I could see it as a foreseeable future, but they definitely should not go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway twice, whether that's going to the oval and then the road course. They have to pick either or. I do appreciate that they're trying something new, but at the same time, I like that it does do the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval. And I think I would have still kept that as the July 4th weekend race as well, and definitely got rid of Road America on that date. I think it makes more sense for Indy to be there on July 4th and Road America there after Watkins Glen, because they're kind of in similar locations up there as well. But yeah, that's my hot take, I guess. I think it's definitely probably some of our biggest difference there. You like the Indianapolis road course. I'm skeptical, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. I don't think it was necessarily necessary. So that's my hot take for today, Kyle.
What I will simply say is that I hope that the race is good enough to win you over next year, because I know we both enjoy the oval, seemingly you more than I, but that Xfinity race won me over this year. I just got to say it. And that Xfinity race on the road course was more entertaining than any of the Brickyard 400s that I've watched in recent memory. So with that in mind, yeah, what goes up against the Xfinity race from this year?
For a Cup Series race on the oval?
Yeah.
I'd say, well, how far back can I go?
Whatever you so choose.
Okay, well, I'll say 2015 was pretty great for Kyle's inaugural Brickyard win. Not just because Kyle won, but I think it was a great race in general. Lots of late restarts there. I think the 2017 race with Casey Kane winning was pretty freaking incredible. That was mayhem.
Yeah, but that was only because
action.
of the cautions.
But so what? It's the race itself. It is what it is. It's a part of the race. Cautions increase excitement in some regard, and I thought that was a great race up until that point. Lots of different strategy. Casey King could have still won the race even if there wasn't cautions. If it went green there with green flag pit stops, it would have been a great upset no matter what. But I think those two races stick out in my mind as something those were really great races that could rival the Xfinity race from this season. I'm not as crazy about it as you were this past year. I thought it was a great finish. Those last 10 laps were obviously great with Briscoe, Cindric, and Allmendinger, but those are three really good road course racers, and I don't know if we'll necessarily get the same product in the Cup Series.
We'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm interested to see who is not necessarily right, but who gets their side of the things more favorable. If your side of things being more positive about it pays off, or if the negative side of things will pay off. But we'll move on from the Indianapolis road course, Kyle, to Michigan's lone date, the second to last race of the regular season. They lose a race date. This is my biggest A+ of the entire schedule. Thank you for getting rid of the Michigan race date. Thank you. I've been saying this for so long. Michigan is overrated. Such a bad track. I can't stand the racing there. I'm sorry, Michigan, if you listen to this, but I'm sorry. I don't like your racetrack. So I think it makes total sense to drop a date there for bringing in a road course, especially. I'd rather have it makes sense in how they think about it in terms of losing a race date at this track and bringing in a road course. But thank you to NASCAR for making this incredibly easy decision on my behalf there. So what are your thoughts on Michigan losing a date? Something that obviously the motor country, motor city there in Detroit, it's not as what it used to be, but Michigan losing a date nonetheless.
It just made sense. The racing there recently just hasn't been very entertaining. It's been a dud year in, year out, essentially. So it just
and
made
they're so
sense
close
to
together when they had two races there too. It's just like Pocono.
Yeah. So I definitely like the move there.
Yeah. Not too much else on that. We're kind of getting down to any last changes here, Kyle. That's basically
change.
It.
The rest of the way, the only other change here is Texas and Kansas swapping dates. So Texas becomes the first race of the round of 8, Kansas the second, versus this year when Kansas is the first. I don't know if that's like a scheduling thing. I don't know what it is, but it was kind of weird. But I think
everything
more broadly, rather than talking about any of the weeks individually, just more broadly, no changes to the playoffs. I was a little bit surprised by this.
I'm honestly not, though. I'm not. I think they've nailed the playoff schedule, to be honest. I think it's a great schedule. I think this season has already proved that it's exceptional. So obviously Richmond is kind of in there, but at the same time, you like having that one regular season date, one playoff race. It's going to be a short track. It makes sense to have that Richmond date in there. But what are your thoughts on keeping it the same?
Yeah, I definitely don't hate the decision. I think that they've got a really, really good mix in the playoffs. The one thing I am surprised about is the amount of road courses on the schedule, but only one still being in the playoffs. I was a little surprised by that, just given you're going so heavy into the road courses and kind of sticking them all in the regular season maybe congests it a little bit and maybe takes away from that fun factor of the road courses. If you spread it out a little bit, and maybe if you have a road course, like you've got, just looking at it, you've got Watkins Glen, Indianapolis there, Road America in the middle of the summer. It's just, I don't really see where you could have done it. I'm just surprised that the only change was just kind of a swap inside of a round anyways. I mentioned it earlier. I would prefer to see Texas be a regular season date and Atlanta be the playoff date there. But again, contractually, I'm sure that's not a possibility. So all in all, I'm very okay with the playoff staying the same because I think that it's as close to a perfect formula as you can get there. Not huge on the championship race being one track. I much prefer to see that be a rotation. But that being said, I like the playoffs, so I'm okay with it staying the same.
Okay. I'll pose the question to you. Just a little fun thing here.
Okay.
Actually, wait. I'll go to this first. It was just because the schedule's kind of wrapped up here. They're having 28 one-day shows next season. I think that's a huge aspect of it.
I don't like that at all.
So we texted about this a little bit. We obviously have our opinions. This season with COVID-19, there has been no practice, no qualifying since we've come back from the pandemic. So, and they're looking to continue that next season, 28 one-day shows with no practice, no qualifying. And when you look at other motorsports, namely Formula One and IndyCar having their normal regular race weekends, why can't NASCAR do the same thing is a question that I'm asking myself on a daily basis. But nonetheless, Daytona 500 will have practice and qualifying. The Bristol Dirt will have practice and qualifying, thank God. Coca-Cola 600 will have practice and qualifying. Nashville, COTA, Road America, the Indianapolis Road Course, and then Phoenix, the championship finale, will all have practice and qualifying. So only 8 races next season will have practice and qualifying from what we're seeing. I am not a big fan of that at all. I think that's going to give me another F for myself. I think it makes sense to have – I understand that there's a lot of practice in a weekend. I think that there should be less practice. Same with Formula One. I think 3 practice sessions for that is a little absurd. I think there should be 1 to 2 at max. For NASCAR, I could see 1 long practice session, like 1.5 hour, 1 hour and a half practice session kind of thing. Qualifying on the same day as you race kind of thing. I don't think that's too out of the question to put out there. But I think 28 one-day shows is a little bit off the mark. Obviously, they're thinking a little bit with COVID still being around next season that they are trying to limit travel and limit amount of people at the racetrack during a race weekend, which makes sense. But at the same time, part of the fan experience, if you do have fans at tracks, is seeing the practice and qualifying aspect of the weekend. And I think they've kind of missed the mark on this one, especially saying that next season's playoffs, only one of them is going to have practice and qualifying, when I think realistically all 10 of them should have practice and qualifying. Maybe not Talladega. I can understand that one. Maybe not having qualifying because it is kind of just single car. But for the most part, I think you should have practice and qualifying basically every weekend.
See, I would even be fine with it if they didn't have practice and it was just one-day shows, but you still have qualifying. Like, that really isn't that hard to do, because the whole thing is that they don't want teams to have to bring the second backup cars and the costs that go in with that. So then just keep the one-day shows, but keep the qualifying. If you reckon qualifying, that's your fault. Like, it's pretty straightforward.
One lap. You just got to make a lap, dude. Come on.
If they keep the formula where your previous race finish position and fastest lap and all that factors in, okay. But the whole problem that I have with this is that, let's just use Christopher Bell as the example for this year. He had a rough 3-4 races to start. He had a couple of wrecks, had some mechanical stuff. And then when COVID hit, he was caught behind the 8 ball the entire season because of that 4 races at the beginning of the season, and couldn't overcome it because there was no qualifying. So their improved speed didn't affect their starting position. And because of that, they were starting in the 30s, not having any shot at any stage points in the first, even the second at times, and would basically screw them over from the possibility of trying to point their way into the playoffs. Now, it would have been a long shot regardless for them to do so. But if you're looking at the possibility of any team picking up stage points, or even different drivers maybe pointing their way into the playoffs, you're not getting any possibility of winning a stage. If you're 16th to 20th starting position, you're not going to be winning the stages there at all. If you got a fast car, maybe you can get up into the top 10 to get stage points, but you're not getting any playoff points there. Say you show up to a track and you've got the speed to qualify top 3, but because of where you are in the running order and previous week and all the whatever the qualifying formula is, you're starting 16th. So you run in that first stage, you get up to 5th. That's probably running for a stage win. if you're not starting that far back. So I just really don't like it based off of the format that NASCAR has, the emphasis on consistency throughout the race, starting well, getting stage points, everything like that, and then also not having qualifying to decide how the race starts. So
yeah,
I just don't like the decision. I know you feel much the same as I do. I don't get why it's not possible, but all the other big series can have full race weekends, let alone just one-day shows with qualifying. I don't get why, but it's the way that they've decided to go. I get it from, like, if they're trying to cut costs and prevent backup cars and everything like that. I get it, but I also don't. It's the pinnacle of stock car racing. You should be able to figure out a way to do qualifying, let alone practice and anything like that. So
if you're doing it for the other races, then you can do it for all of them, right? Like, don't just single out 8 racetracks.
It's dumb.
Yeah. All right. There's not much else to really say on that.
That gets an F for me too.
Yeah, you get an F?
Like,
all right.
That's the one F I'm giving out.
All right. Well, I'll pose the question that I was going to ask you a little bit earlier there.
Okay.
If you were to change anything about the playoffs, in terms of adding, you can make one move, you can make one decision. What would be the one change that you would make, since it hasn't changed from this season to that season? Because that's really the only non-difference from this schedule this season to next season.
If I were to stay inside the realms of realism and basically take all the race dates that we have here and basically figure out something that I'd do. For one, I feel like it's a pretty easy choice for me. I'd be taking Texas out. And what I would be putting in, you know what? I'm just going to say straight up swap Texas for Atlanta there. Atlanta used to be the final race of the season, so it's not unheard of to have it late in the season there. Maybe having the second date, maybe we get to see that sometime in the future again if we get a rotation of championship races. So for me, even though I would like to see the championship race rotated, I think Texas being the dud that it is, if there's no contracts involved, I'd move Texas up to a regular season race, remove kind of the earnest so I don't necessarily have to watch it the entire time, and go and swap Atlanta for that date.
Okay. Mine would be changing the championship race.
That would be my number 2.
I would change Phoenix I would change it for like Texas in there, and then I'd bump Texas up, and I'd put Homestead Miami back as the finale race. I can't get over that loss, really. It's going to feel really weird this season not having it as the championship race. I think it's basically the best racetrack that you could really put it as. Can I
just remove Texas entirely and put a second Homestead date, or is that
that could I do that? That would be great.
Is that allowed, or
can I just get Texas entirely? But
that would probably be my number 2.
Yeah, I can understand. I would go. Your thing is number 2 for myself. Like, I think
there we go.
Right. I think either or is not a right. There's no wrong move there. I think those are the 2 biggest gripes for myself. I think the 2.5 miles in that last round there is what kind of turns me off there. I think if you put Phoenix in that last round there, it's a nice mix with Phoenix, Kansas, and Martinsville. Yeah. And then I'd put a 1.5 miles as the end.
Best mile and a half, multiple grooves.
Because it makes sense.
If NASCAR's quintessential races are the 1.5 miles, if that's your bread and butter, it should be the best one for the finale. So it just makes sense to be Homestead. It's what it's been for forever. If you're going to have one race be the championship race, it should be Homestead. I'm not huge on keeping Phoenix for multiple years here. Hopefully we see a rotation or different race as the championship race. Maybe Atlanta gets that championship race.
Interesting move that would be.
Season finale if once all of the kind of infrastructure around the track gets completed, because that's kind of the reason why Phoenix has it right now. They had all the improvements made to the infield and everything around the race there. So they get the championship race. Maybe we see that in the future with Atlanta. Maybe that's why they got the second date here. It's a precursor to that coming in the future. But those are the moves we'd make, at least if we had that one that we could do.
And then
Well,
I think
if I had God power, I'd be putting Montreal on, but
I'd put my backyard as my as mine, but it would make the most sense for myself. But I'll go on to the last portion here of the Cup Series schedule here. I think it's just a fun little thing to end it. The biggest omission, you're most skeptical. We've kind of already talked about them all, just to kind of wrap it up, and then something that they absolutely missed. Like they got wrong. So what would you say is your biggest omission from the Cup Series calendar that is actually staying at the same size of 36 races and not decreasing or increasing like some people have speculated for the last couple of seasons as well?
So again, keeping inside the world of realism here, I'm not going to pick Montreal here because it wasn't a reality because of COVID and everything. In the future, it should be a reality and it should be on the schedule. But for next year, given COVID and everything, you can't be going to Canada and everything, and we'll probably see Canadian Tire off the Truck Series schedule, I would assume, as well next year, just given COVID and everything there. So my biggest omission, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, it's got to be Gateway for me. I was really hoping that it would be on the schedule here. I really like it as a unique track. There's nothing really like it in NASCAR right now. It's kind of comparable to Darlington there, but much, much flatter. I really like the different strategy you can do there with shifting in turns 1 and 2 or staying in 4th. So from that perspective, Chicagoland losing the date as well, so you technically still be going to Illinois, even though it's the opposite end of the state there. Gateway's got to be the biggest omission for me.
I'm gonna say Iowa for myself. I really like Iowa, and it looks like the track does not really have a positive future in the sport as well.
No,
seems like it may get demolished or sold for farmland because of the lack of attendance and keep up with the cost essentially to run the place. So it doesn't look like Iowa will be, even though it would be a dream to have another kind of, that's a short track to me. That's a short track, right? The way it's kind of set up. I think it would be a great addition to the Cup calendar. I think it would bring a lot of exciting racing. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, as Iowa's like people like to say, but at the same time, I think it would be a great racing product. But it looks like the future of Iowa is very much in doubt in terms of in stock car racing. So even in racing in general, it seems like the end is near for Iowa Speedway, unfortunately. But that would be my notable. My biggest omission. Nick Gateway would probably be right up there with it, but I'd say Iowa just takes the cake for myself there. But we'll move on to what are you most skeptical about? Something that we've already discussed at length. But what would you say are you most skeptical about?
Removing Bristol Dirt from the conversation here. I'm going to go a little bit off the board here. And I'm going to say I'm pretty skeptical about that clash at the road course. I just feel like,
interesting.
Given what we saw this year, I feel like you need a lot more cars than what you're going to get in the clash for it to be an entertaining race, because in road courses, it's not just the lead that you're paying attention to, it's throughout the field. And when you essentially have the field on the track there, you're having the amount of battles that you could potentially be having and interesting things to watch for. I really like the Daytona road course, but for the clash, I do like that it's under the lights and everything on a Tuesday there, which is kind of weird why it's on a Tuesday. But I'm a little bit skeptical and I'm a little bit hesitant as to how decent it's going to be. Hopefully I'm proved wrong. Hopefully it's a great race and everything there, because I would love to see that. I'm just not certain that it's going to be the case.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that it's not on the actual regular season calendar either.
I like it
on the clash. I like that it's not on the regular season calendar as well.
If you're gonna have the road course on there, I don't hate it as a clash, but I'm hesitant as to how entertaining it's really gonna be with like a 20 car field.
Yeah, it's not many. It's gonna get pretty spread out, but I think I'm most skeptical about Road America for myself. I think it being strung out as well. I'm not the biggest fan of the track. It's obviously great scenery-wise. I think there's definitely some great pictures that are taken at the track, but I don't know necessarily that the racing is going to be what I would hope for. I think they've kind of overdone it with the road courses here, especially not adding any short tracks. I would have loved to have seen maybe Road America, namely, off the calendar and bringing in a short track there. I think it would have been a nice addition to the calendar, especially when you're losing that Bristol date, which is something that I can't get over. But I'm definitely most skeptical about Road America. But the last thing, I think we can both agree on this. What did they get wrong?
Bristol dirt.
Oh, I was going to say the 28 one-day shows, but no. Both of them.
I thought we were sticking with the actual
I was
races,
joking. I was joking.
Yes.
I was joking.
If we're talking everything, it's the 28 one-day shows are worse than Bristol dirt, in my opinion. But
yeah, I could agree with that. Yeah,
Bristol dirt is, if we're talking about schedule, that's as close to an F as I'm going to get for any of these race dates.
Yeah.
Themselves. You gave it the F yourself. That was, well, sorry, but it's just not good. It's just not good. Like, it's going to be a dud. It's not going to be good. I just don't know what they're thinking, taking one of the most exciting races on this calendar and turning it into this gimmicky, just cluster, you know what, of a race. So
yeah. All right. I think that kind of does it for the Cup Series calendar after about an hour and a half discussion on
it
that.
Deserves it. They totally deserve changes. Deserves
that was
props
great.
to NASCAR and making the changes. Over, I think, just before we move on.
Oh yeah.
Overall
final grade. Yeah.
Final grade. I'm going to give this schedule an A-. I think that it was very, very good for NASCAR to follow through on the promise of making wholesale changes to the schedule. And they did so in this iteration. I think 8 or 9 significant changes, whether that being race dates being moved a month or different tracks or extra race dates for tracks already on the schedule. They fulfilled the promise. There was a couple duds in there, but I think overall NASCAR needs to be commended with doing basically the most that they could with what they were working with and really opening things up for this upcoming year. So I'm going to go with an A-.
I'm going to go with a B. I think just kind of middle of the lane there, not too high, not too low, really. I think they definitely made some good improvements. Michigan getting rid of a date, that's definitely high up there for myself. Adding Coda, great addition there. Bristol Dirt, obviously, we've talked about that at length. Indianapolis Road Course brings that down another letter grade, I'd say, for myself as well. Road America there, but adding Nashville Super Speedway, I like that. All-star race at Texas. I'm okay with that, with Coda getting the race. And then Dover losing a race, I'm good with that. And Darlington getting a race, and Atlanta obviously getting a race. I'm pretty good with that. I'd rather have Chicagoland on there instead of adding maybe a Darlington date, I'd say, if that was a possibility. But nonetheless, I think they've upheld their promise on changing things up. They definitely gave it a facelift. They've revamped it a lot. And I think 2021 will provide new opportunities for guys that you don't usually see up at the front with these road courses to get points and maybe sneak out a couple of surprise victories there, depending on if we get rain or not, or who knows what the heck can happen next season.
Hopefully we get that first Cup Series rain race at least.
Yeah, but all this is all tentative, right? So anything can happen next season.
That's true.
And this could all be for nothing, this conversation with having to stop the season in the middle of it again and having to go to Darlington twice and then, 3 Bristol dirt races or whatever you want to have happen. But, that kind of does it for the NASCAR Cup Series calendar. So now we move on to another series that announced their calendar for next season.
This one will be much shorter, don't worry.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in about, I'd say, less than 10 minutes. I
don't even know if we'll hit that because they only made 3 changes.
Okay. Do you want to give this one? You go ahead and lead this one off here, Kyle, because you've got...
Yeah, sure. I got it written down here. IndyCar going with the 17-race schedule, same schedule length as it was originally supposed to be for 2020. 3 notable changes here in terms of tracks going on and off the schedule. And kind of going with what I mentioned earlier, I'm not a huge fan of going to races necessarily twice unless they're the premier ones. Well, IndyCar doesn't really care what I say. So they're adding 2 extra dates for 2 races that were already on the schedule. They're adding a second date for Texas and adding a second Indy Grand Prix. So not going to the Oval twice, they're going to the road course twice, which I like that second move. Not sure about that first move. But the other big one and the big A-plus move here, clearly, is going to the streets of Nashville and that awesome circuit that we've talked about previously. Once that was confirmed and the layout was released, it looks like that's going to be an awesome race. Super excited to see that. Jimmy Johnson's going to be in that, which is crazy. But losing their dates because of those 3 additions, Circuit of the Americas, which was expected for some reason. I don't like that move because it's the
Budget
premier
cuts,
road course, but I get it from a business standpoint. Iowa off the schedule, don't like that at all. And then Richmond off the schedule as well. So an A+ move in there for IndyCar, a couple of like C grades, and then probably close to like a D losing Iowa there for me. So not a ton of moves, but the big thing there, for us at least, is that Streets of Toronto is back on the schedule. What was it, July 11th or something like that, right around that date, which is awesome to see. We were uncertain as to whether they would be coming back up to Canada for that race, just given COVID and everything. They are doing so here in Toronto, which is going to be awesome to see. I was hoping that 2020 would be the first time that I would actually be able to go to a proper racetrack, not just a drag strip. I grew up around those, but I've never actually gone to any NASCAR events or IndyCar events or anything like that. I was hoping that 2020 would be the year. I was planning on staying in Toronto, would be able to go to the Toronto Grand Prix here. Wasn't obviously able to do that because of COVID and everything. Hopefully next year things are in the better way so that we can actually enjoy the Toronto Grand Prix here. But I'm super, super excited for that. I think that's just the biggest thing for me. Obviously, Nashville Street Circuit's awesome, but Toronto's back on the schedule, which is pretty hype.
Yeah, ditto. I hope that I am able to experience that next season, whether that's looking from a nice hotel room overlooking the track or just actually being able to experience it nonetheless. So I'm going to have to travel out there at some point next summer. Hopefully it's right in the middle of summer, so it's interesting timing for myself to come out there. But we'll see what happens for next season. I would love to go to an IndyCar race. I've never been, so I think it'd be something. Green flag on the scene would be something.
I'm super here for green flag on the scene.
So we'll get into discussions, preliminary discussions on what will happen with that, whether there's tickets available and stuff way down the line from now.
Down the line.
Any final thoughts here, Kyle, before we move into the fantasy portion of today's show? Any breaking news on
nothing
Twitter?
that I've seen other than just kind of confirming that the cars are staying the same for next year, the 750 horsepower, less than a mile and a half, just the stuff that we already knew essentially. I don't think that there's been anything breaking that's anything big that we didn't know previous, but all I'm going to say is that it's great that we finally have some confirmation for what's going to go on next year. It's been playing out for so long because of COVID. We finally know, and it's great because we don't have to keep speculating about the schedule and everything for next year. We know what it is. We can get excited for it while also appreciating the end of this year. And, of course, silly season and everything that goes with it. We'll still be paying attention to that very much for next year. But at least we don't have to worry about the schedules anymore.
Yeah, I think that's encouraging that they're staying the package, the pretty much the exact same here. Makes sense. I'm glad that they're doing that. It seems like adding that addition with the 750 horsepower package to Darlington and Nashville, I think that adds a lot to those two races there. But nonetheless, I think that'll do it for the schedule recap for today's episode. And now we move into the fun portion of the show, another fun portion of the show. That was actually really fun there.
That was really good.
I really enjoyed that. But we'll move on to the competitive portion of the show, I should say, where Kyle has been well, I'm trying to be nice to you here.
Oh my God, my luck has been so brutal. Like anytime that I pick a guy and they're having a surprisingly good day, something happens, completely screws me over, and you have the nice consistent picks that go out and get you the win. So I got to mix something up here. So I'm going with a completely off the wall strategy today. I know you've been waiting to finally find out what the hell it is.
Yeah.
But like starting it off, having the win in my hands at Darlington and falling out with Chase Elliott and Martin Truex Jr. getting into each other. And then even last week with Austin Dillon having such a good run, I make the ballsy pick. He's in my lineup. And then just debris or something, the belt falls off and goes 8 laps down. Just you've dominated fantasy this year. I'll give you that. You've been superb. What are you like top 500, top 600 now? In the fantasy?
520, 5. What am I?
How am I supposed to compete with this?
So yeah, it's tough. You know, I do feel bad for you in terms of some of the luck that you have. Like it's
hitting me.
No, I'm serious. I'm being genuine here. But obviously, if you missed Monday's show, Kyle said he had something pretty crazy lined up for today's fantasy installment. So it's been really bugging my brain the last couple of days on what he's trying to get past me here or what he's thinking. But I'm excited to see what he's got. Obviously, I'm a little bit still undecided on my picks here as well. I've got a couple of names written down that are kind of on the edge of making it here, but kind of will be dictated on what Kyle says here on what he's trying to do. But trying to go for 5 in a row here to start the playoffs. That's my goal here. See if I can get – if I win this weekend, then he can only draw me for the rest of the playoffs, which would be something nice to hear. But he beat me on the last super speedway race at Daytona, so he's looking to do that once again. So I think without further ado, Kyle, we start off today's fantasy lineup. And do you want to go first or should I?
That's up to you.
Well, I think you went first last week, so I think I'll go first this week.
Okay.
We'll kind of go back and forth a little bit as per usual. Yep. So I'll start off with my lineup with Ryan Blaney. We're not going to give any statistics because that does not matter one bit
here.
To Talladega. I mean, it's just going to be a crapshoot. But I like Ryan Blaney a lot on the super speedway tracks. How can you not? He's won the last 2 races here. And in photo finish fashion, he's been superb on these kinds of tracks. And I think what?
Photo finish fashion? Oh, that's a tough one.
Thank you. And I've got no water left, so I'm on dry mouth. So, yeah, Ryan Blaney is my first pick for this week's fantasy for Talladega. Who do you have as your first pick for fantasy Talladega?
I don't know.
What?
And that's because it's Talladega. And my strategies these past few weeks have not been working because I am 0-4 here in the playoffs. So I have a list of 31 competitive drivers here that have a shot at finishing in the top 10, and I am on random.org, so I am just going to randomize this list 6 times, and whoever pops up first is going to be in my fantasy lineup. Your thoughts?
Do I have a thought right now? What are you doing?
Okay.
If you beat me with this strategy, I will lose it.
Okay, random number 1. John Hunter Nemechek, welcome to my lineup. Has the best. This is actually kind of funny. He's got hilarious. The best average finish at Talladega at 8.0 because he's raced there once and finished 8th. That's pretty funny. He almost won the race earlier this year. Actually, he got wrecked going across the line. So John Hunter Nemechek,
get beat by this stupid randomizer.
Welcome to my lineup.
All right. Oh shoot. Well, I can't go basically anything off of your lineup this week then. Oh my god. There goes that strategy.
I told you I knew exactly what I was doing, but I had no clue who the people were. There you go. It's Talladega, man. Who the hell knows?
Okay. Well, I hope you get some Hamlin and Harvick's here. That would be ideal to lose some usages here.
They finished 1-2.
Yeah, my luck. All right. My second pick will be I'll go with Eric Almirola. I'll go with the numbers. I think that makes a little bit of sense for myself. I'll be a bit more conservative here. I'm not going to use really any of the big names at Talladega. It just doesn't make too much sense. But at the same time, you want to incorporate some historical significance in terms of that. So Eric Almirola gets the finishes, an incredible 4.71 average finish in the last 7 races here. 7 top 10s, 1 win obviously back in 2018, 5 top 5s, 31 laps led. I'll go with Eric Almirola as my second pick.
I like it. Number 2 here. Here we go. Random again. Ryan Newman, welcome to the Talladega lineup. Hey, you know what? I don't hate that one either. 14.8 average finish in the past 10 Talladega races here. 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s. Of course, the photo finish last year against Ryan Blaney, lost out on that one. So Ryan Newman, welcome to the lineup.
You're really letting fate decide it here for you.
I am, man. Dude, if I can't decide it, at least I can blame fate. So there you go.
That really bugs me that you got Newman because I want to put Newman in my – yeah, screw it. My third pick's Ryan Newman. I'm going to just go one.
Okay, you're matching Ryan Newman.
Tit for tat. I'm not wasting – I'm not losing to a freaking random.org. Yeah, I'll go Ryan Newman. I think he gets the finishes here. Obviously was unlucky at Daytona earlier this season. I think that luck turns around for him on these super speedway tracks this upcoming Sunday. So I'm going to go with Newman as my third pick.
Okay.
If you get like Stenhouse or some stupid stuff here, like, come on.
This one's a little bit tough, I'm not going to lie. Welcome to the lineup, Denny Hamlin.
That's really good. What are you talking about?
It is using a usage for Denny Hamlin, though. So
you could garage him, though.
I could garage him, but you never know. But what I will simply say is he's good at super speedways, way better at Daytona statistically. But we'll see what happens if he's up at the front competing for stages or if he's just solely going for the win. He doesn't really have to worry about points at all. So we'll see what happens there. But Denny Hamlin, welcome to the fantasy lineup.
The best super speedway racer just, random. Let's take him.
Hey, I got it here. I can screen record if you want.
No, I'll just keep going here. Screw it. What's the point? I'm going to lose to a freaking randomizer this week.
Well, how many times have we finished this segment in like the past 3-4 weeks and you've gone, damn, I don't know if I'm going to win this week. And then something happens in the third stage and I'm completely screwed over. So
that's true.
At the very least, the randomizer I can blame for this one instead of just my thought process.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. as my next pick. Just makes sense to put him in these super speedway tracks. He's very aggressive, kind of like Logano, but I think he's kind of tempered it a little bit this season. I think he's done some pretty good stuff. So I like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. on the super speedway track. So that's my fourth pick, I guess. Yeah.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is the one guy that I'm hoping pops up eventually because he's always in the conversation at the end. So that's a very good pick. If I were actually picking these, he'd definitely be in my lineup, but it's up to the randomizer. So number 4 is Denny Hamlin again at the top. So we have to go again. I apologize. Here we go. Here we go. This is pretty funny. Number 4 in my lineup is Brendan Gaughan.
Oh, that's a sneaky good pick, though, because he finishes the races.
Welcome to the lineup. He doesn't get the stage points, but if he finishes the race, it's usually in that top 10 conversation. It's his last Cup Series race.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Which is pretty cool. Hopefully he goes out in a good fashion. He almost won the race last year, which is pretty funny. But Brendan Gaughan.
Just welcome. For that minor flip that he had.
Yeah, except for that minor flip. So Brendan Gaughan, welcome to my Talladega lineup.
Yeah, he's got the 25th best average finish in the last 7 races here, so keep that in mind. Damn, this really sucks because I like going off of your lineup a little bit with my decisions, but I can't do that this week. So, I've been playing the strategy where the cars behind me here, they usually get me the results. So I'll stick with my gut here. I'll go with Alex Bowman as my next pick, as my 5th pick. I like the momentum that the 88 car has been performing lately, and I think Alex Bowman is a pretty good bet to have a solid run here at Talladega. So that's my 5th pick. One more to go.
I like that. Okay, number 5. Let's give me somebody another decent one here, and I like this one as well. I'm matching you for that Hendrick speed. We got Jimmy Johnson in the lineup here. I don't know. It's not Chase Elliott, so Chase Elliott's probably the number 1 Hendrick guy here. Maybe William Byron gets in that conversation for that win at Daytona. But, hey, if Jimmy Johnson's going to pick up a win here down the stretch, it's going to be at Talladega or the Roval here probably. So I don't mind that addition to the lineup because I do really, really like that Hendrick speed at the super speedways. We saw Jimmy in the conversation for much of that Daytona regular season finale, got caught up in that wreck, which had him miss the playoffs. But I don't hate that random pick there.
All right. Do you want to go again for your next picks?
You want my final random? Okay.
Yeah.
The final random. Finishing out my lineup, we have, kind of fitting that it's back-to-back here with Hendrick and then RCR based off of one of these stories from earlier this year. Welcome to the lineup, Tyler Reddick. He was he caused
That's
one of the big wrecks there. He won a stage earlier this year, I think, at Talladega as well. So Tyler Reddick is proving himself as a pretty good super speedway racer. So that finishes out my lineup. There you go.
So who do you have again? Sorry, I just need to.
So recap. My lineup is John Hunter Nemechek, Ryan Newman, Denny Hamlin, Brendan Gaughan, Jimmy Johnson, and Tyler Reddick.
It's not bad, man.
It's not bad.
That's random. Has saved your butt here.
Oh, man. Well, okay. To be fair, I had the 31 competitive-ish names in there. So I think like the worst.
I love that you put Brendan Gaughan in there. That's hilarious. That you put.
He's in the conversation. So like I removed like the Rick Wares, the like Quinn Houff. Like I removed those ones. So there you go.
Frank,
You going for your last one?
I'll go with where is he on the
Who are you thinking here? Talk me through things.
Okay, I've got Kurt Busch listed here as one. Someone going to maybe go for stage points here, get some playoff points because he can the only one that feels safe. Clint Bowyer was someone I looked at. I have him behind me over here, so it's a bit. I'm touch and go on that one. Chase Elliott was someone I looked at as well. This sucks. I can't believe that
If only you had a randomizer here to help you with that decision.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking properly.
I can randomize the list and give you a last one if you want.
I'm good. The randomizer just does not give me any good luck.
Here,
So
I'll
Logano was someone I'm looking
and I'll
at.
let you know who it is. The
Okay.
final. Okay, it's Tidal, and I wouldn't recommend it. So
Yeah, I'll pass.
yes. Somehow he ranks.
He's 11th. He's 11th best average finish in the last 7.
Well, he's always he finishes the races. Good for him. But okay, that's off topic. Who's your last pick?
I'll go with I've got 3 usages left on Denny. I'd try and match you there, but I feel like it's a bit risky to use Hamlin. I'll go with Clint Bowyer. I'll stick with my gut. I think he's going to play it. I think he might play it safe and stay at the back to try and get a good finish there. So,
well, what's interesting here is because of my strategy, we only have one similarity, and that's Ryan Newman, which means that is going to be wide open at Talladega. It's going to be pretty funny. What I will say is that I feel a lot more confident about your lineup than mine in terms of stage points. The only question is when does that wreck happen and who gets through it? Because that's going to decide things. It's what decided things last
5 of our guys could get involved in the same wreck, right?
Like all our entire lineups could be toast, and we could be looking at 15, 40-point finishes if we're talking about it. But who knows? If we've got 11 unique drivers here, so hopefully at least a couple are there at the conversation at the end, unless they're all the same 11 guys in the one wreck. But this is going to be funny. I thought the idea of the random popped into my head as the closing or a couple hours after the finish of the Vegas race. I was feeling pretty down in the dumps about my fantasy lineup here. I was like, what the hell can I do to beat this guy? So I was like, you know what? I'll let the computer decide. So here we are. And you know what? I don't hate that lineup.
All right. To wrap up today's show, I think we just go with our winner picks for this weekend, and then that'll kind of conclude it. So
yes.
This is something that you can't really random. Let's just get your full opinion on this one. Who is going to win this weekend at Talladega?
Brandon Gaughan. No, I'm kidding. Who is going to win at Talladega? Well, it's an interesting mix because you can look at somebody in the playoffs potentially being there at the end. You could look at some non-playoff guys who don't have as much to risk here. So I'm going to go way off the board. I'm going to say we get another playoff upset. I'm going to say Eric Almirola wins this race.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope that happens for my lineup's sake. But I'm going to go with Alex Bowman. Screw it. Let's go with a little bit of a wild card as well. I like Alex Bowman's speed on these super speedway tracks. So that'll conclude it for today's episode. Lots to talk about, obviously, with the schedule recaps and the fantasy previews and everything else under the sun. It seems like we didn't really get any breaking news, really, except for the schedule the package. But long show today. If you watched and listened this entire thing, we really appreciate it. Make sure to go follow us at The Green Flag on Instagram. Posted a graphic there about Kurt Busch yesterday, and then we will have the fantasy recap from Vegas up later this week. So make sure to stay tuned for that. So any final thoughts here, Kyle, before we move into the weekend at Talladega?
Just hopefully we don't have as much news as we did this week. Again, the big stuff that really kind of took up the show, of course, with the schedule taking up a bulk of the show. Hopefully, going forward here, we start getting some more silly season stuff, but hopefully it's spread out so we can talk about it all evenly as it should be. But I'm very excited for Talladega, as always. Truck Series cutoff race is going to be very interesting. Xfinity, maybe somebody can go out and get an upset win. So excited for all of those. Hopefully the random lineup pays dividends. I'm looking forward to watching all my random guys and see how they do and going up against your logical picks. So very excited for everything this weekend.
Logic versus random is the storyline this Sunday at Talladega. Obviously, like Kyle said, the finale for the first round of the Truck Series playoffs is on Saturday or Friday? I think it's Friday, Saturday, whatever.
Ooh, I don't know.
The Xfinity Series this weekend as well, Cup Series obviously, and then the Harvest GP for IndyCar making its return to action as well. So make sure to go watch those races this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun, and this has been a great episode today. It's been something that we've been anticipating for a while in terms of the schedule breakdown. So it was nice to finally get that set in stone when a pandemic is going on and it could totally all be for nothing. But with that, this has been today's episode. I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. Hope you guys enjoy the races and make sure to stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend.